Chapter 1684. Yi Xian did not leave with Dao Yi and Life Law. That was because the alien dimensional race's experts had arrived. If he did not stay behind to stop them, Dao Yi and Life Law would not be able to escape. Yi Xian looked into the distance. In the horizon, space suddenly split open and an old man slowly walked out. The old man had white hair and wrinkles all over his face. He looked extremely old. Yi Xian looked at the old man and thought, "Senior, is this person above intent realm?" Beast God said, "Not really." With that he paused, "But you can't beat him." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Beast God said, "You can try." Yi Xian smiled. "How about a bet?" Beast God was curious. "What bet?" Yi Xian looked at the approaching white-haired old man. "If I can beat him, what will Senior do?" Beast God asked, "What if you can't?" Yi Xian smiled. "Senior can make a request. I won't refuse if it's within my capabilities." Beast God smiled. "Really?" Yi Xian nodded. "Really?" Beast God laughed. "Sure. If you kill him, I'll also agree to one request of yours." Yi Xian smiled. "All right." Yi Xian looked at the white-haired old man in the distance. He could not sense his aura at all. Although the white-haired old man did not surpass Intent Realm, he was definitely an expert at the peak of Intent Realm. The white-haired old man also looked at Yi Xian. "God Yi?" Yi Xian nodded. Just as the white-haired old man was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. In the distance, the white-haired old man narrowed his eyes and pointed his finger forward. This point directly touched the tip of Yi Xian's sword. Boom! The long sword trembled violently and a powerful force surged out, causing the surrounding space to collapse. However, the white-haired elder did not retreat at all. He forcibly blocked the power of Yi Xian's sword. As for Yi Xian's sword, there were 100 stacked. The white-haired old man looked at Yi Xian. "God Yi, you're much weaker than before." As soon as he finished speaking, he twisted the fingers of his right hand. Boom! Yi Xian was sent flying several thousand zhang away along with his sword. The white-haired old man glanced at Yi Xian's body and said softly, "What a powerful physical body." In the distance, Yi Xian glanced at the sword in his hand and chuckled. "This old man isn't just ordinarily powerful." The beast god said, "You still can't beat him now." Yi Xian smirked. That might not be the case. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. In the distance, the white-haired old man took a step forward and punched. "Fight head-on." Yi Xian still drew his sword, but this time it was not 100 sword-drawing techniques. Instead, it was 130 sword-drawing techniques. That was because this time he directly used the beast god's arm. The power of the twin dragons converged in his body. As Yi Xian's sword descended, the space within several tens of thousands of zhang immediately collapsed. That sword strike was earth-shattering. In the instant that Yi Xian used the power of the twin dragons, a hint of surprise flashed through the white-haired old man's eyes. However, he did not retract his fist. Boom! A wave of sword light suddenly erupted from the white-haired old man's fist. A powerful force violently shook the surroundings, causing the surrounding dimensional people to immediately retreat. The white-haired old man's body began to tremble violently. That was because his body was starting to be unable to withstand the power of Yi Xian's sword strike. Right at that moment, the white-haired old man suddenly closed his eyes. Yi Xian immediately felt that something was amiss. He wanted to retreat, but it was already too late. For some reason, the space around him suddenly became strange. The next moment, the old man's fist strangely landed on his abdomen. Boom! Yi Xian was directly sent flying tens of thousands of zhang away. After Yi Xian came to a stop, a trace of blood slowly flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the white-haired old man in the distance. At that moment, the white-haired old man was in an extremely strange state. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior, what kind of divine ability did he use just now?" The beast god said with a smile, "It's not any divine ability. It's just time reversal. He used the time dimension to suppress you and reverse time. Simply put, he can always be one step faster than you. Unless you can cut off his time dimension or your attainments in time surpass his, you have no chance of defeating him. As for the current you, your attainments in time are simply inferior to his. Moreover, you can't cut off his time dimension with a single strike. Therefore, you can't defeat him. Always one step faster than me." Yi Xian fell silent. If it wasn't for the fact that his body was sufficiently strong, then he would have been dead just now. The white-haired old man was walking slowly towards Yi Xian in the distance. As he moved forward, Yi Xian noticed that the space around him had suddenly started to vanish bit by bit. Moreover, he felt that his time dimension was vanishing as well. He's trying to destroy my time dimension. What a strange ability. Yi Xian looked at the white-haired old man. At this moment, the white-haired old man had already become illusory. Yi Xian frowned because he noticed that his body seemed to be trembling. No, it was disintegrating. Meanwhile, the beast god said, "This old man is using the time dimension to disintegrate your body." Yi Xian's eyes slowly closed. The beast god said, "Kid, what are you doing? Let me tell you, even if you utilize the beast god technique, you won't be able to defeat him." Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes and they were completely blood red. The power of bloodline. After Yi Xian activated the power of bloodline, Yi Xian immediately utilized the beast god technique once more. Bang! The space around Yi Xian collapsed and was obliterated. It couldn't endure his strength at all. Yi Xian didn't waste his breath at all. He just drew his sword and slashed. It was an overlapped sword drawing technique. This slash caused the space and time dimension in an area of over 30 kilometers to be destroyed. As for the white-haired old man, he retreated explosively. He retreated several tens of thousands of feet. At the instant he stopped, his physical body collapsed and only his soul remained. Meanwhile, Yi Xian clenched his fist towards the white-haired old man from afar. Bang! The white-haired old man's soul seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and it floated away once more. Soul attack. This was a new technique that Yi Xian had learned in the Heaven Opening clan. This technique was simply too awesome to deal with people with weak souls. At this moment, the white-haired old man's soul was very weak. That was because Yi Xian's sword had not only destroyed his body, but also heavily injured his soul. Yi Xian didn't kill the white-haired old man right away. Instead, he stored the white-haired old man's soul. The other dimensional people in the distance were dumbfounded. He was killed just like that. At this time, the beast god sighed softly. "Your power of bloodline is really overbearing." Yi Xian smiled. "It's all thanks to Senior's beast god technique. If it wasn't for Senior's beast god technique, I wouldn't have been able to kill this person just by relying on my power of bloodline." The beast god said, "Everything about the other dimensional people is good, but they focus too much on cultivating the time dimension. Once you break their time dimension, they will be like lambs waiting to be slaughtered." Yi Xian nodded. He had also discovered that the other dimensional people weren't that scary. Of course, the prerequisite was that you could break their time dimension. Yi Xian didn't continue to attack. He turned around and left. His top priority now was to save Dao Yi. At this time, a golden light flew over from afar. Seeing this golden light, Yi Xian's expression sank. "Wuxia." Yi Xian opened his palm and Xiao Ta appeared in it. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Xiao Ta, what are you doing? Didn't I tell you to take them away?" Xiao Ta smiled awkwardly. "Young master, I can't bear to part with you. I want to live and die with you. If you don't leave, I definitely won't leave." Yi Xian's face darkened. "Speak human language." Xiao Ta smiled bitterly. "Young master, we can't leave. The way back has disappeared." "Disappeared?" Yi Xian frowned. At this time, Law of Life and Dao Yi appeared beside Yi Xian. Dao Yi said in a low voice, "Our clansmen have moved the way back. Now we can't go back." Saying so, she looked at Yi Xian. "What should we do?" Yi Xian didn't say anything. He opened his palm and the white-haired old man's soul appeared in it. The white-haired old man's consciousness had been erased. This was a pure soul. Yi Xian gave it to Dao Yi. "Absorb." Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. "Can I not absorb it?" Yi Xian was expressionless. "Because he's your clansman?" Dao Yi nodded. Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, "You're an idiot." Law of Life looked at Yi Xian in shock. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian without saying anything. Yi Xian was furious. "You and God Yi are both super idiots." At this time Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, God Yi is you." Yi Xian said angrily, "I'll scold him. Not only will I scold him, but I'll also hit him." With that said, he slapped himself in the face. The sound of the slap was extremely loud. Xiao Ta trembled. "Young master, I don't understand what you're doing." Dao Yi lowered his head slightly. "Don't scold me." Yi Xian said angrily, I'll scold him. God Yi is a super idiot. He clearly has invincible strength, but he still chose to die. Is it because he can't defeat the aliens? He could do it. If he can defeat them, why choose to die? Just because of you? Damn it, this idiot. Does he think letting you kill him is because he loves you? I love his ancestors. And you, Dao Yi. You betrayed God Yi for your sister and your people, then blamed yourself. Then you betrayed your people for me. Damn it, is there something wrong with your brain? Or do you think this is fun? Can't you be a little more firm? What you're doing is putting me and the aliens in an awkward position. Do you know that? Dao Yi did not say anything. Yi Xian looked at the soul in his hand, then shook his head and smiled. Dao Yi, why did I come to this place? Do you think I'm here to play? I'm here to save you. And now you're telling me that the aliens are your people. Then what am I to you? After saying that, he took out a dagger and handed it to Dao Yi. Since you said that the alien dimensional people are your clansmen, then I'm now your enemy. Come, stab this dagger into my heart. This way your clansmen will be able to rest easy. Dao Yi's body began to tremble. Yi Xian suddenly roared, come on. Just like how you killed God Yi back then. Now as long as you make a move, your people will win. Chapter 1685. Hearing Yi Xian's words, tears welled up in Dao Yi's eyes. It hurts. At that moment, Dao Yi's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Yi Xian's words were truly heart-wrenching. At the side, Life Law glanced at Yi Xian and was about to speak, but was glared at by Yi Xian. Life Law was speechless. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Why aren't you doing anything? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. He did not speak, but his tears continued to flow. At that moment, a powerful aura suddenly came from the horizon. Yi Xian looked up and saw a woman slowly walking over from the horizon. The woman wore a crown on her head and held a folding fan in her hand. Seeing that woman, Dao Yi's expression sank. It's the military advisor. Military advisor. Yi Xian frowned. She seemed to be a formidable figure. At that moment, Dao Yi said, she's the brains of our alien race. You must be careful. You? Yi Xian glanced at Dao Yi. What does my life and death have to do with you? Dao Yi was speechless. At that moment, Beast Deity also said, kid, this person is not simple. You must be careful. Yi Xian thought to himself, surpassing intent realm? Beast Deity said, it's not as simple as surpassing intent realm. It's not as simple as surpassing intent realm. Yi Xian's expression sank. In the sky, the woman walked over to Yi Xian's group. She sized up Yi Xian and smiled. God Yi. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Yi Xian. The woman smiled. Indeed. The current you is Yi Xian, not God Yi. Yi Xian held his sword in his left hand and was about to strike first. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly smiled and said, young Master Yi, don't attack because you can't kill me. If you make a move, you will only waste our time. Yi Xian looked at the woman. The woman smiled and said, young Master Yi, if you want to make a move, you can wait. Right now I want to talk to you. Yi Xian smiled and said, what do you want to talk about? The woman blinked. Let's talk about our future. Yi Xian was silent. The woman continued, I sent someone to look for your younger sister, the woman in the plain dress. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. He looked at the woman and asked, and? The woman smiled. The people I sent are all dead. Yi Xian said nothing. The woman said softly, she's stronger than I expected. No, I should say that her strength might not be weaker than God Yi back then. At that point, she looked at Yi Xian. She's not weaker than God Yi. Young Master Yi, do you think I underestimated her or overestimated her? Yi Xian said calmly, I don't know. The woman smiled and said, it seems that I've underestimated her. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, you deliberately sent someone to look for her to figure out her strength. The woman smiled. What else could I do? Yi Xian looked at the woman. Did you figure it out? The woman blinked. Young Master Yi, do you know why I'm talking to you here? It's because I found out that the woman behind you is not simple. Otherwise, she waved her folding fan gently. You'll die if I do that. Of course, I know that there's a powerful existence inside your arm guard, but he seems very weak right now. So, if I want to kill you now, it should be a very simple matter. Yi Xian's heart trembled. The other party had discovered Senior Beast God's existence. The woman suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, since there's such a powerful existence behind you, I don't think there's a need for us to fight to the death. We can talk. After all, we didn't kill anyone from you, so there's no deep hatred between us. What do you think? Yi Xian smiled. What do you want to talk about, miss? The woman said, Yuya. Young master can call me Yuya. This is the name I gave myself based on you humans. Yeah. Yi Xian glanced at the woman. Miss Yuya, what do you want to talk about? Yuya smiled. Young Master Yi, we, the alien race, need the Great Tao origin, which is your constitution. As for your constitution, it seems to have been sealed. We can help you unseal it for free. Of course, after the seal is unsealed, I hope that young Master Yi can join our alien race. As long as young Master Yi is willing to join our alien race, we will definitely not treat young Master Yi unfairly. Yi Xian smiled. Can you give me something practical? Yi Xian sneered in his heart. This woman still wants to trick me. Damn it, who does she think Yi Xian is? Yuya's smile became more and more brilliant. Young Master Yi, what benefits do you want? Yi Xian smiled. What can Miss Yuya give me? Yuya looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, if you join our alien race and provide us with the Great Tao origin, your position in our alien race will be second only to the Patriarch. Not only that, our alien race will also do its best to help young Master Yi improve himself. Yi Xian said, I only need to be responsible for converting the Xianxia. Yuya smiled. Yes. Yi Xian shook his head. I don't think it's that simple. I think Miss Yuya must have some other request. What do you think? Yuya looked at Yi Xian for a moment and said with a smile, I do have a small request. That is, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble in the future, young Master Yi must hand over a part of your soul and a part of your consciousness to our alien race. Of course, we definitely won't harm young Master Yi. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Dao Yi suddenly said, You can't. Yuya looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi said in a deep voice, If you hand over a part of your soul and a part of your soul to the alien race, you will be under our control for the rest of your life. Some of them looked at Dao Yi. Does it have anything to do with you? Dao Yi said angrily, Do you have to be so stingy? Yi Xian shook his head. I'm not stingy. Dao Yi, can you confirm your position first? Dao Yi was silent. Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. You're not saying anything. Fine. Do whatever you want, I don't care. Saying so, he looked at Yuya. Miss Yuya, I feel that your request is not unacceptable. However, I have to go back and discuss it with my people. Do you think it's okay? At this time, a voice suddenly came from beside Yuya. He's looking for an excuse to slip away. Yuya slapped him with the back of her hand. Alien race person was sent flying. Yuya coldly looked at the alien race person who was sent flying. Nonsense. How could young Master Yi be that kind of person? Saying so, she turned to look at Yi Xian and said with a smile, Right? Yi Xian smiled. Miss Yuya, I definitely have to go back and discuss such a big matter. What do you think? Yuya nodded. Of course. Since that's the case, young Master Yi can go back. Yi Xian blinked. Then I'll be going. Yuya smiled. Go. No one will stop young Master Yi. Yi Xian glanced at the law and Dao Yi. Let's go. Saying so, he turned around and left. At this time, Yuya suddenly smiled. Young Master Yi, Dao Yi won't be going back with you. She's an alien race person, so of course she has to stay with them. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression sank. Damn it. It really wasn't that simple. Yuya looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi, you can go. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi said in a deep voice, You can go. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. They're using you to threaten me. Tell me, what should I do? Dao Yi shook his head. I won't let them have their way. Yi Xian sneered. What? You want to die again? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Let's go. Yi Xian stared at Dao Yi. Dao Yi, I'm not God Yi. I won't be indecisive. Now I want you to answer me. Will you come with me or will you stay with the alien race? If you're willing to come with me, I'll help you kill our way out. If we can't, we'll die here together. If you choose to stay with the alien race, then everything between us will be written off. I don't owe you anything and you don't owe me anything. Kill our way out. At the side, Yuya looked at Dao Yi and smiled without saying anything. Yi Xian continued, If you choose to stay with the alien race, don't say that it's for my own good. I, Yi Xian, don't need that kind of good. Understand? Dao Yi slowly closed her eyes. Yi Xian did not say anything else and waited for Dao Yi to make her decision. If Dao Yi really decided to stay with the alien race, Yi Xian would not care about her anymore. He meant what he said. Law of Life also glanced at Dao Yi. She knew that Yi Xian was different from the previous god Yi. If Dao Yi chose to stay with the alien race, then Yi Xian would definitely cut off all relations with Dao Yi. Dao Yi kept silent for a long while. Then she suddenly looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "If only you had said the same thing back then." After saying that, she walked to Yi Xian's side. "From now on, I'll go with you regardless of life or death." Yi Xian laughed. He grabbed Dao Yi's hand and turned to look at Yuya. "Miss Yuya, I want to leave with Dao Yi." Yuya shook her head. "I won't allow it." Yi Xian laughed. "Do I need your permission?" After saying that, he directly stored Dao Yi and Law of Life into the prison pagoda. Yi Xian opened his palm and a sheathed long sword appeared in his hand. The next moment he rushed out and slashed with his sword. 100 sword drawing techniques. One slash shook the heavens and earth. In the distance, Yuya smiled slightly. She held the folding fan in her hand and pointed forward. Boom. This point directly hit the tip of Yi Xian's sword. Rumble. The long sword in Yi Xian's hand trembled violently. Then he was sent flying backward. He was sent flying thousands of feet away. Yuya looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Young Master Yi, you said you wanted to kill your way out. But now I think you can't." In the distance, Yi Xian looked at Yuya and said, "You don't mind if I call for help, right?" Yuya narrowed her eyes. "You can try." Yi Xian opened his palm and a Xiaota appeared in his hand. Looking at Xiaota, Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Xiaota, show me your trump card." Xiaota fell silent. Yi Xian's face sank. "Don't play dead." Xiaota didn't respond. Yi Xian's face darkened. "What do you mean?" Xiaota suddenly said, "Young master, I have diarrhea. I can't talk anymore. You're on your own." Yi Xian. "P.S. I had a dream last night. I dreamed that I was first in the monthly votes." Chapter 1686. Xiaota directly ran into Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian's face immediately sank. "Damn it, this Xiaota is really unreliable." Opposite Yi Xian, Crescent Moon smiled. "Young Master Yi, why aren't you calling for help?" Yi Xian looked at Crescent Moon. The corner of Crescent Moon's mouth raised slightly. "I know young Master Yi still has some trump cards. Young Master Yi can display them and let me have a look." Saying that, she paused for a moment, then said, "I also know that young Master Yi is good at scheming. If young Master Yi has any plans, you can also display them." Yi Xian looked around. At this moment he was surrounded by the other dimensional people. He was already surrounded. Kill his way out. That wasn't very realistic. At this time, Soul's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "Young master, I can't suppress Sister Dao Yi's soul any longer." Hearing this, Yi Xian's face immediately sank. In the distance, Crescent Moon blinked. "But Dao Yi can't hold on any longer?" Saying that, she lightly tapped the fan beside her and a chair appeared. She sat on the chair and said with a smile, "Young Master Yi, I can hold on, but can you?" Yi Xian smiled. "Since you won't let me go, then I'll stay." As his voice fell, his smile gradually became sinister, and the blood in his body began to boil. Gradually his body turned blood red. Bloodline power. The moment the bloodline power was activated, Yi Xian directly operated the beast god technique. Boom. A powerful force swept out from his body, and the surrounding space began to tremble. Crescent Moon looked at Yi Xian and her smile gradually disappeared. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned into a blood-red sword light and disappeared. Crescent Moon didn't get up. Instead, she closed her fan and pointed forward. This point directly hit a sword light. Boom. The sword light instantly exploded, but Crescent Moon immediately retreated 1,000 feet away. After repelling the Crescent Moon, Yi Xian didn't chase after it. Instead, he turned around and slashed at a different dimensional person on his right. Before that person could react, Yi Xian's sword slashed through his body. As for his soul, it was directly absorbed by Yi Xian into Xiaota's body. This time, Dao Yi did not refuse and directly absorbed it. Yi Xian wanted to attack again after beheading a different dimensional being. But right at this time, the Crescent Moon suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian subconsciously blocked it with his sword. Boom. Yi Xian was directly shaken to the point of retreating rapidly. Crescent Moon looked at Yi Xian. All of you step down. Upon hearing Yueya's words, the experts of the other dimension withdrew one after another. Yi Xian looked at Yueya. Just as she was about to say something, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. A sneer appeared at the corner of Yueya's mouth. She suddenly put away her fan, rushed forward and pointed her finger. The space where her finger landed suddenly split open, along with Yi Xian's sword light. Boom! The strange space where the two of them were was directly destroyed. The strength of the two of them was too strong, so strong that even the space of the other dimension couldn't withstand it. After his first attack failed, Yi Xian sheathed his sword and fiercely slashed again. This time he didn't hold back in the slightest. 130 sword drawing techniques. The instant he slashed out, Yue's eyes narrowed and a trace of graveness flashed through the depths of her eyes. She turned her right hand into a palm and lightly blocked the attack. A strange power quietly condensed in her palm. The power of the time dimension. At this time the sword fell. Boom! Yueya instantly retreated tens of thousands of feet, and the space within tens of thousands of feet was directly turned into nothingness by Yi Xian's sword. After forcing Yueya back, Yi Xian didn't attack again. He immediately turned around and disappeared into the horizon. Just as Yueya was about to chase after him, a voice suddenly rang out. "Let him go." Yueya slightly wrinkled her brows. She turned her head and saw a middle-aged man slowly walking over from not far away. Xijing, the great elder of the other dimension race. His status was second only to the patriarch. Yueya lowered her head and looked at her palm. There was a deep sword mark there. Yueya lightly laughed. This person has just entered the deity realm, but his combat strength is already enough to injure me. After saying that, she looked at Xijing. If I don't kill him now, he will definitely become a disaster in the future. Xijing looked into the distance with a calm expression. The people you sent to find the plain-dressed woman have all died, right? Yueya nodded. Yes. Xijing said, how did you evaluate her strength? Yueya thought for a moment, then said, she's not weaker than God Yi back then. She might be stronger than I expected. Of course she might also be weaker. Xijing softly said, she's stronger than God Yi. Yueya frowned slightly. Why do you say so? Xijing said, why hasn't this child awakened yet? Hearing that, Yueya's pupils suddenly shrank. He's been suppressed. Xijing nodded. Yueya was silent. Yueya was suppressed. Wasn't it obvious who was stronger and who was weaker? Xijing softly said, back then our clan misjudged God Ye's strength, causing our clan to suffer heavy losses. This time we can't make the same mistake again. Yueya suddenly said, I have an idea. Xijing said, speak. Yueya smiled. Inform the Yi clan. Yi clan. Xijing frowned slightly. Why? The corners of Crescent Moon's mouth curled up. What the Yi clan did back then was not ordinary. If they knew that the person they wanted to kill hadn't completely disappeared, do you think they would be able to endure it? Xijing, I can't bear it. But Crescent Moon smiled and said, are you worried that the Leaf clan will harm our alien race? Xijing nodded. Crescent Moon shook her head. Don't worry. If the Leaf clan still cared about him, they wouldn't have helped us back then, nor would they have forced him to his death. There is no possibility of reconciliation between the Yi clan and God Yi. As she spoke, she raised her head to look at the horizon and said softly, actually, there's something that I still don't understand. It's not an exaggeration to say that God Yi is unprecedented. Why did the Yi clan of Eternal Life World not only expel him from Eternal Life World, but also kill him? Xijing whispered, maybe it's because he's too monstrous. Crescent Moon looked at Xijing. Xijing said, wasn't Yi Xian like this in the Yi clan back then? If he's too outstanding, he will break some balance and even threaten the status of some people. Just like the emperor in the secular world, if the crown prince is too outstanding, can the emperor bear it? Crescent Moon nodded. Indeed. Xijing said again, don't inform the Yi clan for the time being. Crescent Moon looked at Xijing. Xijing said, there are 3 reasons. First, although the plain-dressed woman is strong, she shouldn't be able to crush our clan. Second, if we inform the Yi clan now, once we kill Yi Xian, who will the great Dao body belong to? Our clan will not be able to compete with the Yi clan of Eternal Life World. Third, as far as I know, although God Yi was expelled from Eternal Life World, he was the most monstrous person in the clan back then and he had many supporters. Back then, when he was expelled from Eternal Life World, his 19 subordinates were dissatisfied and rebelled on the spot. And these 19 people actually had hundreds of thousands of people surrounding the Yi clan. As he spoke, he shook his head slightly. At that time, although the Yi clan was suppressed, it also made the Yi clan fall from the number 1 clan in Eternal Life World to number 2. Crescent Moon was a little emotional. Such an outstanding person ended up like this. Si Jing nodded. Although the Yi clan eliminated many of God Ye's people back then, it's hard to guarantee that some of them are still hiding. In addition, according to my investigation back then, God Yi was engaged to the eldest daughter of the Hera clan. Now, the eldest daughter of the Hera clan has become the second most powerful person in the Hera clan. Crescent Moon said, "It's just a marriage contract. Moreover, the marriage between the big clans is all for the benefit. Now that God Yi is no longer the young master of the Yi clan, I'm afraid the Hera clan will no longer recognize it." However, Si Jing shook his head. Well, when God Yi was trapped in the Yi clan, the eldest daughter of the Hera clan personally led people to the Yi clan to rescue him. As far as I know, part of the reason why God Yi was able to escape unscathed back then was because of the eldest daughter of the Hera clan. At that time, the eldest daughter of the Hellion clan actually summoned the soul of the Hellion clan's ancestor for God Yi. Obviously, the eldest daughter of the Hera clan is not just interested in God Yi. Although the Hera clan is only the third largest clan in Eternal Life World, if she still has feelings for God Yi, it will be disadvantageous to us. As he spoke, he looked into the distance. Let's deal with Zhou Xian and the plain-dressed woman first. If the plain-dressed woman's strength exceeds our expectations by too much, then we'll inform the Yi clan. If the Yi clan wants to completely destroy God Yi, they must kill Zhou Xian. If they want to kill Zhou Xian, they must fight against the plain-dressed woman. At that time, even if we can't obtain God Ye's great Tao body, we can still take over the universe outside. The spiritual energy of the entire universe is enough to support our alien race for at least 10,000 years. Crescent Moon nodded. That's fine. Si Jing suddenly said, "How long until the seal comes into contact?" Crescent Moon said, "At most half a month." Si Jing asked again, "Do you know where the plain-dressed woman is now?" Crescent Moon said in a deep voice, "She should be in the ruins of God by now." Si Jing frowned slightly. "What is she doing there?" Crescent Moon shook her head. "I don't know. This person is too strong. Our people don't dare to approach and can only follow from afar." Si Jing was silent for a moment, then said, "I'll go meet her. I must first figure out her strength." Crescent Moon thought for a moment, then nodded. "But be careful." Si Jing chuckled. "Don't worry. Even if I can't beat this woman, if I want to leave, even 10 of her won't be able to stop me." His words were filled with confidence. With his current strength, he could not be said to be invincible in the world, but if he did not continue fighting apart from that abnormal place, Eternal Life World, there were not many people in this world who could stop him. After a moment, Si Jing disappeared. Crescent Moon turned and looked into the distance. After a long time she chuckled. "Yi Xian, I'm afraid your backer is unreliable." After saying that, she turned and left. Under the guidance of Beast God, Yi Xian found a way out and left the alternate dimension. After returning to the sealed starry sky, Yi Xian immediately released Dao Yi. At this moment, Dao Yi was still abnormally weak. The damage caused by the soul-drilling nail was too great. If not for the soul-suppressing sword and the souls of the 2 intent realm experts, Dao Yi would already be dead. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior Beast God, do you have any way?" Beast God was silent for a long time. "There is one way, but I don't know if you are willing to do it." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Senior, please say it." Beast God said, "Soul complementation." Yi Xian was stunned when he heard this, and then he said, "Dual cultivation?" The Beast God was silent for a long time. "You old pervert." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1687. The beast deity was helpless. "I was talking about soul complementation and you actually thought of dual cultivation. Was there any ambiguity in my words?" Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. "I misunderstood." The beast deity said calmly, "Misunderstood? I think you really want to dual cultivate." Yi Xian immediately put on a straight face. "Senior, please don't spout nonsense. I, Yi Xian, am not that kind of person." The beast deity said, "You are a beast." Xian, the beast god continued, "Let's get back to the main topic. Soul complementation is to use your soul to nourish hers. Simply put, it's equivalent to a fusion of souls. Under such circumstances, her soul will be nourished, but you will become weaker." Xian said, "Then it's fine. Let's begin." The beast deity continued, "Let me finish first." Xian nodded, "Speak." The beast deity said, "If your soul is fused with hers, nourishing her, something miraculous will happen between your two souls. She may know some of your inner thoughts. Of course, you will also be able to know some of her inner thoughts. To put it simply, the two of you are treating each other with sincerity and sincerity. Both of you will know how she treats you and how you treat her. Not only that, when she absorbs your soul will become weak. If she is greedy, she can completely devour your soul." Xian was somewhat hesitant. The beast deity chuckled, "Are you afraid?" Xian laughed, "What am I afraid of?" As he spoke, he looked at Dao Yi. "I have a way to save you. Soul complementation." Dao Yi looked at Xian. "Soul complementation?" Xian nodded. His soul left his body and entered Dao Yi's body. Dao Yi was dumbfounded. At this moment, the beast deity suddenly asked, "Why did you enter her body?" Xian was somewhat confused. "Soul complementation? Isn't that entering her body?" The beast deity was somewhat speechless. "Brother, who said soul complementation requires you to enter her body? Her soul could leave her body. What were you thinking when you entered a girl's body?" Xian's face darkened. "Senior, you didn't even make it clear." The beast god said, "You didn't even ask me. Brat, your thoughts are not pure." Xian was speechless. Xian quickly left Dao Yi's body because he sensed something unspeakable in Dao Yi's body. Dao Yi looked at Xian. Xian smiled. "It's a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. Hurry up and eject your soul. Our souls will fuse together." Dao Yi smiled. "Do you know what it means to fuse our souls together?" Xian nodded. "I know." Dao Yi blinked. "Are you still willing?" Xian laughed and said, "Cut the crap. Let's start." Dao Yi was silent for a moment before she ejected her soul. Under the guidance of the beast deity, their souls started to fuse together. When their souls fused together, both of them couldn't stay calm anymore. Especially Xian. Because he could clearly feel everything about Dao Yi. It was even scarier than water and milk. Why was it scarier? Because in this state, both of them could see each other with sincerity. There were no secrets between them. Just like that, Dao Yi started to absorb Xian's soul bit by bit. Dao Yi didn't absorb too much because if she did, it would cause irreparable damage to Xian's soul. Xian didn't probe too much into Dao Yi's past. Mutual respect was still necessary. If he wanted to, he could find out about Dao Yi. But he didn't do that. About 2 hours later, Dao Yi stopped and looked at Xian. "It's done." Xian asked in his heart, "Senior, is it done?" The beast deity said, "It's done. How do you feel now?" Xian said, "I feel a little weak." The beast deity said, "That's normal. You just need to recuperate for a while. As for this girl, she's fine for now. However, you still need to find some soul-related supplements for her." "When's the soul all of a intent realm expert?" Xian nodded. "All right." With that, his soul returned to his body. Dao Yi's soul returned to her body as well. Xian looked at Dao Yi and asked, "How do you feel now?" Dao Yi nodded slightly. "Much better." Xian turned to look at the whirlpool behind him and said, "I'm afraid the seal won't last for more than half a month." Dao Yi looked at Xian and asked, "Where are your father and sister?" Xian said, "They're gone." Dao Yi asked gravely, "Can you contact them?" Xian smiled. "I'll take care of the rest myself." Dao Yi looked at Xian and said, "I have good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first?" Xian hesitated and said, "The bad news first." Dao Yi said gravely, "Do you know why you died all those years ago?" Xian shook his head. Dao Yi looked at him and said softly, "A mysterious power intervened that year. I've investigated this power before. It's the Yi clan of Elysium." Xian frowned. "Elysium? What the hell is this?" Dao Yi looked at Xian and said, "Elysium is a very scary place. There's a very scary spiritual qi there. It's the qi of eternal life. This qi can give you eternal life." Xian blinked. Eternal life? Are you sure? Dao Yi nodded. It said that the qi of eternal life can give you eternal life. But, with that she looked at Yi Xian and said, it said that the qi of eternal life is not endless. Yi Xian, Dao Yi said gravely, the bad news I told you just now is that the previous master came from Elysium and he was expelled. When master fought against the alien dimensional race, the Yi clan appeared. At that time master talked to them. Later for some reason master chose to die. With that she looked at Yi Xian and said, when I killed him he didn't resist at all. He said that he didn't blame me for dying in my hands. Yi Xian said gravely, why didn't the Yi clan exterminate all of us? Dao Yi shook her head. It's not that they didn't exterminate all of us, but they didn't expect that samsara could send you into samsara by force. At that time you were really dead. However, samsara used the rules you set in this universe and forcefully used them to send you into reincarnation. She deceived everyone. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, have you found her? Dao Yi nodded. Found her. But just like you she didn't awaken. Yi Xian asked. Who? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian and said, are you sure you want to know? Yi Xian smiled and said, of course. Dao Yi said gravely, it's Yi Ling. Yi Ling. Yi Xian was stunned. Dao Yi said gravely, after she reincarnated she chose to be by your side to accompany you. But just like you she didn't awaken. Yi Xian didn't say anything. Dao Yi said. Looking at Yi Xian he asked, what do you plan to do? Yi Xian smiled and said, Linger is my little sister. Nothing can change this. Dao Yi nodded slightly. Yi Xian said, will the Yi clan still come to find me? Dao Yi nodded. Definitely. Because for a big clan like them, they will definitely eliminate the root of the problem. Especially you as the most monstrous person in the past, they won't let you live. Yi Xian's face immediately darkened. I haven't even dealt with the alien dimension yet, and now there's the Yi clan. Are they really going to force an innocent girl to become a prostitute? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Force an innocent girl to become a prostitute? Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. What I mean is, I really want to rely on myself. I don't want to rely on my father or my little sister. Dao Yi said gravely, they might not be particularly afraid of your father and your little sister. This kind of powerful clan is extremely arrogant. They don't even care about ordinary people. By the time they take your father and your little sister seriously, it's already too late. However, I'm afraid your father and your little sister won't interfere in your matters. So, you have to think of a way to deal with this Yi clan that might appear at any time. Yi clan. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. What kind of sin have I committed? I haven't even dealt with one enemy, and now there's a new one. Saying so he looked at Dao Yi. I don't want to work hard anymore. Really? Dao Yi. At this time Yi Xian was indeed somewhat annoyed. He hadn't dealt with the alien clan yet and now there was this Yi clan. How could he live like this? Most importantly he hadn't done anything but the Yi clan wanted to kill him. Was he born with hatred? As if thinking of something Yi Xian hurriedly asked, is there some good news? Dao Yi glanced at Yi Xian. There is good news. Yi Xian was somewhat curious. What good news? Dao Yi said gravely. The good news is that the alien clan might want to monopolize your great Dao body, so they won't contact the Yi clan for the time being. Yi Xian said gravely, this is the good news? Dao Yi nodded. As long as they don't contact the Yi clan for the time being, we will have more time. This extra time is our opportunity. Yi Xian suddenly asked, who is the strongest of the alien clan? Dao Yi thought for a moment then said, it should be the patriarch. However, I don't know much about the background of the alien clan. In the past, when Master fought with them, the alien clan had many unprecedented experts. Yi Xian was silent for a moment then said, forget it. Our top priority now is to cultivate those pseudo-intent realm experts into intent realm. Let's go. With that, the three of them disappeared on the spot. In the starry sky, a man was shuttling through the starry sky. This man was Si Jing. About half an hour later Si Jing stopped. At this time he had entered the legendary ruins of God. This was a wasteland. The entire starry sky was in ruins and there were broken walls everywhere. Si Jing glanced around then continued forward. Not long after he saw a woman in the center of the ruins. A woman in a plain dress. At this time the woman in a plain dress was playing chess with a white-haired woman. The white-haired woman looked at the chessboard in front of her, lost in thought. Xi Jing looked at the woman in a plain dress. After a moment he smiled lightly and said, "I heard that you only use one sword to kill people. Don't disappoint me." After saying that, he walked towards the woman in a plain dress. Chapter 1688. As the white-haired woman fell into deep thought, the entire starry sky suddenly quietened down. Xi Jing walked close to the two women, but the two women did not even look at him, directly ignoring him. Xi Jing looked at the chessboard. There were less than 5 pieces on the chessboard. Each person had only made a few moves. At this moment the white-haired woman suddenly gave up. "I lost." Lost. At the side Xi Jing was stunned. Wasn't it just a few moves? How did he lose? The plain-dressed woman stood up and was about to leave, when the white-haired woman suddenly said, "The moment I placed my piece I already lost, right?" The plain-dressed woman shook her head. The white-haired woman was stunned. The plain-dressed woman said, "The moment you asked me to play chess with you, you already lost." The white-haired woman stared at the plain-dressed woman. "You have never lost?" The plain-dressed woman glanced at the white-haired woman. "Have you ever seen me lose?" The white-haired woman, the plain-dressed woman turned and left. The white-haired woman looked at the plain-dressed woman. 2 moves. The plain-dressed woman shook her head. The white-haired woman frowned slightly. "Why?" The plain-dressed woman did not turn her head. "You are not my opponent." The white-haired woman. At this moment Xi Jing suddenly laughed. "Your tone is a bit too arrogant." At this moment, the white-haired woman suddenly swung her hand and slapped him. But before Xi Jing could react, his body directly exploded, leaving only his soul. Xi Jing was stunned. The white-haired woman glanced at Xi Jing. "I am talking to a senior, an ant-like person like you dares to interrupt?" An ant-like person? Xi Jing felt like he was struck by lightning and his mind went blank. I am an ant-like person in this woman's eyes? Did she say anything wrong? Of course not. I can't even take a single blow. If I am not an ant-like person, then what am I? This is not the point. The point is that this terrifying white-haired woman actually called the plain-dressed woman senior. In other words, this plain-dressed woman is stronger than the white-haired woman? Xi Jing suddenly felt a bit scared. At this moment the plain-dressed woman suddenly stopped. She glanced at the ruins. There was a battle here? The white-haired woman nodded. Yes. The woman said, "You've lost." The white-haired woman nodded. Defeated. The plain-dressed woman suddenly drew a line with her finger, and a phantom appeared not far away from the white-haired woman. This phantom was Zhou Xian. The white-haired woman looked at the plain-dressed woman. "What do you mean?" The woman in the plain dress said, "If he comes here one day, don't make things difficult for him." The white-haired woman nodded. "Sure." The woman in the plain dress walked into the distance. The white-haired woman wanted to say something but hesitated. Meanwhile, the woman in a plain dress in the distance suddenly said, "If you're trapped in your heart, how can you stand up again if you don't break through it?" The white-haired woman's pupils suddenly constricted when she heard this, and she slowly clenched her fists tightly. After a long time she suddenly started laughing. He trapped himself in his heart. As it turned out, he had already entered a demonic barrier. The white-haired woman raised her head and looked into the distance. At this moment, the plainly dressed woman had already disappeared. The white-haired woman suddenly opened her palm, and a powerful force spread out from her palm. As this power spread out, the surrounding space began to dissipate bit by bit. Even the time dimension was disappearing. Emoku divine power. At this moment, Xi Jing, who was not far away, suddenly exclaimed, "You're the immortal world's goddess Emoku." The white-haired woman turned her head and glanced at Xi Jing. "You know me." Seeing the white-haired woman admit it, Xi Jing's body began to tremble. Goddess Emoku. He was known as the strongest person in the immortal world back then. And the Emoku god clan was even more so. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. The #1 clan in the immortal world. However, for some unknown reason the Emoku god clan disappeared overnight, and the entire immortal world no longer had the Emoku god clan. The reason why he knew about the Emoku god clan was because he went to the immortal world to investigate God Yi. He didn't expect to meet the strongest person in the immortal world back then here. Goddess Emoku. She was an invincible person in the world back then. And at this moment such an invincible person actually called the woman in the plain dress senior? Xi Jing immediately turned around and ran. This news must be brought back to the alien race. He underestimated the woman in the plain dress. He greatly underestimated her. This Yi Xian was not God Yi but someone with a powerful backer. At this moment, Goddess Mo suddenly waved her right hand. Boom. In the distance Xi Jing was directly erased. Pai clan is in danger. This was the last thought in Xi Jing's mind. Lakeside Bamboo House. At this moment, more than 460 pseudo-intent realm experts were breaking through to intent realm. Inside the bamboo house, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground, his eyes closed. At this moment he was thinking back to his fight with Yuya. He discovered that there was still a large gap between him and an expert like Yuya. If not for the power of his bloodline and the beast god secret art, it would be difficult for him to fight against her with just the sword drawing technique. His strength was still not enough. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. He hadn't even dealt with the alien race, and now the immortal world's Yi clan had appeared. This was asking for his life. Yi Xian got up and walked to the lakeside. He opened his palm and a token appeared in his hand. Swordmaster's token. This was left behind by his father before he left. According to Kong Mi, as long as he used this token the alien race was nothing but an ant. Should I use it? Yi Xian shook his head with a smile, then put away the Swordmaster's token. If he called for help whenever he encountered a little difficulty, he would never be able to surpass his father and Qing, or God Yi. Yi Xian suddenly thought of God Yi. Didn't this guy have some followers in the past? At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned, then said excitedly, "Little Mu, you've reached Intent Realm?" Little Mu nodded. At this moment she had already reached Intent Realm. How terrifying would Little Mu be after reaching Intent Realm? She would definitely be able to instantly kill someone of the same level. At this moment, Dao Yi suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. She glanced at Yi Xian. "Do you need help?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Dao Yi smiled. "Let's go." Having said that she turned around and left. Yi Xian followed with Little Mu. After a while the three of them arrived in front of a palace. Yi Xian had been here before. Back then Dao Yi mentioned that two of God Ye's followers were here. Avicii swordsman. Saint Mu swordsman. Dao Yi brought Yi Xian and a Mu to the Avicii swordsman, then asked softly, "Do you know why I didn't let you wake them up back then?" Yi Xian shook his head. Dao Yi smiled. "Because they're really strong." Yi Xian asked, "Intent Realm?" Dao Yi nodded. "Not just Intent Realm but also the peak of Intent Realm. Moreover they were the first to follow Master. If I'm not mistaken they should have come out of immortality together with Master." Having said that she looked at Yi Xian. "Wake him up." Yi Xian asked, "How do I wake him up?" Dao Yi smiled. "Just tell him that he's awake." Yi Xian looked at the Avicii swordsman. "Wake up." Boom. The statue suddenly shattered. The next moment, a man holding a sword appeared in front of Yi Xian. At that moment Yi Xian felt a sense of oppression. The Avicii swordsman looked at Yi Xian. "This chapter is not over, please continue to the next page." However, soon he seemed to have noticed something. He immediately knelt on one knee and said with a trembling voice, "Greetings, Crown Prince." "Crown Prince." Yi Xian glanced at the Avicii swordsman. The other party did not call him Master but Crown Prince. It was obvious that he was brought out from the Yi clan by God Yi. Yi Xian said, "Get up." The Avicii swordsman stood up and looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. "Crown Prince," Yi Xian asked, "are you willing to continue to follow me?" The Avicii swordsman immediately said, "I'm willing to follow you forever." Yi Xian nodded and walked into the distance. Soon he arrived in front of the statue of Swordsman Mu. Yi Xian looked at the statue. "Wake up." Boom. The statue shattered and a one-armed woman slowly walked out. Swordsman Mu. When she saw Yi Xian, Swordsman Mu was slightly taken aback. Yi Xian looked at Swordsman Mu without saying a word. Swordsman Mu looked at Yi Xian as well. He did not say a word. After a long time Swordsman Mu shook her head. "Not awakened." Yi Xian said, "Are you willing to continue to follow me?" Swordsman Mu shook her head again. "You're not the Crown Prince now." Yi Xian nodded. "Goodbye." Having said that he turned around and left. He would not force it. At this time, Dao Yi suddenly laughed. "Wait." Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi looked at Swordsman Mu. Swordsman Mu, Master wants to kill his way back to the eternal world. Yi Xian. Hearing Dao Yi's words, Swordsman Mu's eyes suddenly shrank. She looked at Yi Xian and said with a trembling voice. Really? Yi Xian was about to speak when Dao Yi suddenly said, Master, the karma of the eternal world is not something you can escape. Believe me, this trouble will find you sooner or later because the Yi clan will never let you live. Yi Xian looked at Swordsman Mu. If I don't return to the eternal world, you won't follow me, is that right? Swordsman Mu remained silent. Yi Xian smiled. I won't force you. Having said that, he looked at Dao Yi. Let's go. Dao Yi nodded slightly. The group left. Swordsman Mu suddenly said, Prince. Yi Xian turned to look at Swordsman Mu. Swordsman Mu shook his head. Prince, you left the eternal world back then, but what happened? Did they let you go? Not at all. Now you have reincarnated, but they still won't let you go. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Swordsman Mu looked at Yi Xian. Back then you were too weak. Yi Xian smiled. It won't happen again. Swordsman Mu looked at Yi Xian for a long time, then slowly knelt on one knee. I am willing to follow you. Yi Xian said softly. Don't worry, God Yi was benevolent back then. I Yi Xian will never do such a thing. I will kill whoever tries to kill me. Dao Yi suddenly said, It's time to let that monster out. A moment later the group left. Alternate dimension. On a certain mountain peak, Yuya looked at the scroll in her hand for a long time without saying anything. Xijing was dead. But he was not killed by the plain-dressed woman. He was killed by a white-haired woman. Who was the white-haired woman? She didn't know because the alternate dimension experts who followed Xijing did not dare to approach them. She only knew that the killer was that white-haired woman. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from beside Yuya. Patriarch has come out. Come out. Yuya was silent for a moment, then softly said, I hope that plain-dressed woman is not too strong. After saying that, she turned around and left. P.S. Sorry it's late. But listen to me. The reason why I'm late is because I want to write one more chapter. What's the point of 2 chapters? End of this chapter. Chapter 1689. Yi Xian and the rest returned to the lakeside. At that moment, Yi Xian realized that Shanlin and the lady in white had reached the intent realm. They were the first to obtain Yi Xian's great Dao origin crystals. Shanlin laughed when he saw Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I have reached the intent realm. Yi Xian sized Shanlin up and said with a smile, Congratulations. Shanlin cupped his fists. It's all thanks to young Master Yi. Yi Xian smiled and looked at the lady in white. The lady in white nodded. Thank you. Yi Xian looked at the lady in white. Now that you have reached the intent realm, what do you think? The lady in white shook her head. Nothing else. Yi Xian blinked. You are already an expert in the intent realm. Are you really willing to follow me? The lady in white glanced at Yi Xian. Don't test me. Even if I have reached the intent realm, I can't defeat you. Moreover, you have many experts in the intent realm with you. Yi Xian nodded. Then help me guide them. Then he turned to look at the experts in the false intent realm. From now on, these people are under the control of the 2 of you. If anyone is disloyal, you can kill them directly. Then he pointed with his finger and 2 storage rings landed in front of the lady in white and Shanlin. The 2 of them looked at the storage rings and their expressions changed. There were 50 great Dao origin crystals in each storage ring. Shanlin put away the storage rings and bowed respectfully. Shanlin is willing to follow young Master Yi until death. Yi Xian smiled. There will be many benefits in the future. Shanlin chuckled. I understand. Yi Xian patted Shanlin's shoulder. Remember, the intent realm is nothing. You have to look further. The intent realm was nothing. Dao Yi and the rest looked at Yi Xian with strange expressions. Shanlin blinked. Young Master Yi, this intent realm doesn't seem weak. Of course, I know that it is nothing in your eyes. Yi Xian smiled and said, How about a spar? Shanlin hurriedly shook his head. No, I don't dare to spar with young Master Yi. Yi Xian laughed. Don't worry, just take one of my sword strikes. Shanlin hesitated for a moment and said, All right. Actually, he also wanted to see Yi Xian's strength. He wasn't the only one who wanted to see it. All the other pseudo-intent realm experts wanted to see it as well. Yi Xian looked at Shanlin and asked, Are you ready? Shanlin nodded. Please make your move, young Master Yi. Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. 130 superimposed sword drawing techniques. He didn't hold back at all. The moment Yi Xian unsheathed his sword, Shanlin's expression changed drastically. He clenched his fists tightly and blasted them forward. Boom. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Shanlin was sent flying into the sky. He flew all the way to the end of the horizon. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. He was defeated just like that. At that moment, Shanlin appeared in front of Yi Xian again. At that moment, Shanlin was in a terrible state. Both his arms were chopped off and his body was cracked like a spider web. His physical body was almost gone. Shanlin looked at Yi Xian and smiled bitterly. Young Master Yi, you're too ruthless. Yi Xian smiled faintly. I used 30% of my strength. It's my fault. Are you all right? 30% of his strength. Shanlin's expression froze. Meanwhile, the pseudo-intent realm experts were dumbfounded. Only 30% of his strength? At that moment, Yi Xian glanced at everyone. Everyone train hard. Then he looked at Shanlin. The intent realm is just the beginning. Good luck. After that, he led Dao Yi and the rest away. Shanlin was petrified on the spot. He was shocked. He was defeated by a pericelestial expert with one strike. At that moment, the lady in white beside Shanlin suddenly said, Shanlin, how long have you been training until now? Shanlin smiled bitterly. More than 100,000 years. The lady in white nodded slightly and pondered. Young Master Yi has only been training for about 20 years. Shanlin spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. All the pseudo-intent realm experts present had heard the woman's words, and all of them fell into deep thought. More than 20 years. This young Master Yi had only been training for about 20 years. At that moment, the lady in white suddenly looked at everyone. Everyone focus on your training. Don't try to guess young Master Yi's identity. Since young Master Yi won't tell us, we'll just treat him as an ordinary person. Everyone was speechless. Was he an ordinary person? An ordinary person who had been training for 20 years was more powerful than someone who had been training for more than 100,000 years. He was obviously AF * King Rich Kid. Was there a need to guess? At that moment, everyone was in awe of Yi Xian. In the distance, Dao Yi brought Yi Xian and the rest to a mountain next to the bamboo house. Yi Xian remembered that Dao Yi mentioned that there was a monster in the mountain, and that monster was God Ye's mount back then. Dao Yi said softly, It's time to let the monster out. She then looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the mountain. Wake up. There was a moment of silence. Boom. The entire mountain suddenly shook violently. Gradually, the mountain began to crack and a powerful aura suddenly swept out from the mountain. At that moment, everyone's attention was focused on it. Dao Yi waved her hand gently and a wave of energy blocked the powerful monster aura. The rocks that flew out from the mountain were also swept away. At that moment, an angry roar came from the mountain. Boom. The entire mountain collapsed and a gigantic demonic beast appeared in front of everyone. The monster was as strong as a mountain and looked like a tiger. It had 2 tails and a horn on its head. It looked especially ferocious and domineering. After the monster came out, its gaze fell on Yi Xian. Yi Xian noticed that there were 2 flames burning in the monster's eyes. Dao Yi suddenly said, Flaming Tiger. A monster that Master tamed in Sky Monster Kingdom. Yi Xian was curious. Sky Monster Kingdom? Dao Yi nodded. The one on your arm should be from Sky Monster Kingdom too. The beast god smiled. Indeed. Yi Xian was curious. Senior, what kind of place is Sky Monster Kingdom? The beast god said, a place full of monsters. However, it's different from other places. Sky Monster Kingdom is a country made up of monsters. We have our own complete monster civilization. Yi Xian asked, all the monsters are together? The beast god smiled. Yes. Yi Xian was curious. Won't there be chaos? The beast god said, no. Of course the king must be strong enough. If not, there will be monsters who won't submit. Once there are monsters who won't submit, there will be chaos. But if the king is strong enough, there won't be chaos. Because monsters only worship and respect the strong. As long as you are strong enough, they will submit to you. Yi Xian nodded and thought to himself, I'll bring Arya to Sky Monster Kingdom when I have the chance. He would help Area to the throne of the Tianyao kingdom, and he would be a military counselor or something. Control Sky Monster Kingdom. Yi Xian couldn't help but feel happy. At this moment, the flaming bird tiger suddenly bent down to look at Yi Xian. As it did so, a powerful pressure pressed down on Yi Xian, causing him to frown slightly. The flaming tiger stared at Yi Xian as if it wanted to see through him. The flaming tiger suddenly said, "You are not the master." As it spoke, a strong pressure enveloped Yi Xian. At this moment, the Avicii swordsman beside Yi Xian roared, "How dare you!" His voice was like thunder. The flaming tiger was stunned. The Avicii swordsman glared at the flaming tiger. "Although the prince hasn't awakened, he isn't someone you can blaspheme." As soon as he finished speaking, he drew his sword. The flaming tiger's powerful pressure was torn apart, and the Avicii swordsman slashed at the flaming tiger's head. Bang! The flaming tiger was pushed back hundreds of meters by the Avicii swordsman. Yi Xian glanced at the Avicii swordsman. This guy is extraordinarily strong. The flaming tiger was furious after being pushed back. It charged at the Avicii swordsman and the world trembled. A trace of viciousness flashed through the Avicii swordsman's eyes, and he immediately drew his sword and charged over. Meanwhile, the beast god's voice suddenly resounded in Yi Xian's mind. "If you want to subdue this demon beast, then you have to defeat it yourself. This demon beast only respects the strong, so defeating it is the best method." Yi Xian nodded and then he looked up into the sky. "The Avicii sect, stand down." The Avicii swordsman immediately withdrew his sword and retreated to Yi Xian's side when he heard Yi Xian. Yi Xian gazed at the flaming tiger and then he didn't waste his breath at all. He suddenly charged over to the flaming tiger and then he drew his sword and slashed. 130 overlapped sword drawing techniques. The flaming tiger's expression instantly changed violently. It didn't shrink back and it leaped towards Yi Xian's sword instead. It was a head-on collision. Yi Xian's sword descended. Bang! The space in the surroundings shook violently, and then the flaming tiger was blasted flying under the gazes of everyone. Rumble! Space was obliterated inch by inch as the flaming tiger retreated, and it moved almost 3 kilometers back. This time, Yi Xian hadn't just utilized the beast god technique, he'd even utilized the beast god's arm. The spectators were extremely shocked when they witnessed this scene. That attack from Yi Xian was too terrifying. Even Dao Yi couldn't help but glance at Yi Xian. This fellow actually became so ferocious after his father took him to develop. Now Yi Xian could instantly annihilate ordinary experts with intent. The flaming tiger was quite stunned as well. At this moment, all the scales on its body had split apart. Even though that attack hadn't been able to kill it, it had heavily injured it. Yi Xian gazed at the flaming tiger. "Are you going to try again?" The flaming tiger stared fixedly at Yi Xian while the flames in its eyes burned even brighter. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. "I only utilized 20% of my strength just now. I'll use 100% if you try again." 20%. The flame hawk tiger was stunned, and then it hesitated for a moment before it immediately shook its head to indicate that it wasn't coming. Yi Xian walked up to the flaming bird tiger. The flaming bird tiger looked at Yi Xian and subconsciously took 2 steps back. Obviously it was a little fearful. Yi Xian opened his palm and a drop of blood appeared in his hand. It was Aria's blood essence. When Aria left, she gave him a bottle. The flame hawk tiger instantly became fervent when it saw this drop of blood essence. Yi Xian blinked. "Do you want it?" The flame bird tiger nodded vigorously and extended its claws. Yi Xian smiled and said, "I don't have any other intentions. I just want you to take a look. Just take a look." As he spoke, he put away the drop of blood. Flaming tiger. Also. Chapter 1690. Seeing Yi Xian's action, Dao Yi shook his head and smiled. This guy was really mischievous. In front of Yi Xian, the flaming tiger suddenly roared. Clearly it was somewhat angry. However, Yi Xian did not care about it at all. He turned around and left. Seeing Yi Xian and his party leaving, the flaming tiger became furious and roared crazily, causing the mountains to tremble. However, it did not dare to attack. Fear. Yi Xian's sword attack just now had made it afraid. Because if Yi Xian attacked again, he would definitely be able to kill it. Inside the bamboo house, Yi Xian and Dao Yi were sitting opposite each other. Yi Xian said, If all of us outside reach the domain realm, would we be able to fight against the alien races? Dao Yi shook his head. Yi Xian said softly, the difference between peak experts? Dao Yi nodded. None of the people outside are weak. No, I should say that they are very strong. For them to be able to reach their current level, they must have been monstrous geniuses in the past. If they reached the domain realm, their strength would not be inferior to the domain realm experts of the alien races. However, we do not have enough peak experts. Yi Xian asked, above the domain realm? Dao Yi nodded. Yes. Yi Xian said softly, like crescent moon? Dao Yi shook his head. There is someone even stronger than her among the alien races, which is their patriarch. His strength is not something you can contend against. Yi Xian asked, how strong is he? Dao Yi glanced at Yi Xian. His strength is only slightly inferior to our master. And master's strength, excluding the eternal world, is only below 3 swords. Yi Xian turned silent. Dao Yi continued, the alien races have 2 goals in entering this world. The first is to obtain your Dao origin body, and the second is to absorb the spiritual energy of this universe. There isn't enough spiritual energy in this alternate dimension. If they defeat us, all the spiritual energy in this universe will be devoured by them. At that time, the overall strength of the alien dimensional race will reach a whole new level. Yi Xian said softly, the core is still spiritual energy. Dao Yi nodded his head. No force can do without spiritual qi, especially those big forces. They want to nurture more experts, so they need more spiritual qi. For hundreds of thousands of years, in order to develop themselves, the other dimensional race has been using spiritual energy and the source of the great Tao without restraint. Although the other dimensional race has become a superpower from a third-rate power, the source of the great Tao in the other dimensional world's universe has completely disappeared, and the spiritual energy is also rapidly drying up. As she spoke, she shook her head. Therefore, if the alien races want to survive, they must constantly devour other universes. At that moment, the beast god also said, that's right. The longer a faction lives, the more blood they have on their hands. Back then, the heavenly devil kingdom destroyed at least hundreds of worlds. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Therefore, the other dimensional race will definitely not give up. Unless they know how terrifying your father and sister are. But from the looks of it, they have always been underestimating your father and sister. And the Leaf clan has yet to appear, which means that they want to kill you alone. Yi Xian pondered for a moment, then said, what's the difference between me and God Yi from back then? Dao Yi said in a deep voice, very big. Very big. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Very big. Dao Yi nodded. If it wasn't for the Leaf clan suddenly intervening, the other dimensional race would not have been able to do anything to master. In that battle, they sent out all their experts and used all their trump cards, but they still couldn't do anything to master. Yi Xian was somewhat curious. How did God Yi fall out with the Leaf clan? Dao Yi shook her head, then looked at the swordsman of Path of Avici and Blade Saint Mu beside Yi Xian. The two of you should be very clear. The two of them were silent. Yi Xian looked at the two of them. Can you tell me? The swordsman of Avici said softly, Prince, you did nothing wrong. Your only mistake was that you were too outstanding, so outstanding that you directly threatened the position of the patriarch. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Threatened the position of the patriarch? The swordsman of Avici nodded. Back then, not only was your talent heaven-defying, but your strength was also heaven-defying. Under your leadership, the younger generation of the Leaf clan directly swept the entire eternal world. Back then, you were already invincible among the younger generation before you turned 18. Not only the younger generation but even among the experts of the older generation, apart from those old monsters, very few were your opponents. At that time, you were known as the most monstrous person in the history of Eternal World. Unprecedented. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, since he was so monstrous, why did the Leaf clan want to get rid of him? I know that he threatened the position of the patriarch, but did the other elders of the Leaf clan not care? The swordsman of Avici shook his head slightly. You're wrong. Yi Xian looked at the swordsman of Avici and quietly waited for him to continue. The swordsman of Avici said softly, there are a lot of elders and experts in the clan who support you. Because of this, you caused a disaster. Yi Xian asked, why do you say that? At this time, the swordsman of Mu Xing suddenly said, because of the patriarch. Your prestige in the clan is getting higher and higher, even higher than the patriarch. Everyone in the clan regards you as the future hope of the Leaf clan. Saying that, she sighed softly. The Leaf clan has a rule that every patriarch's term of office cannot exceed 100 years. Once the 100 years is up, the elders and the core members of the clan must vote to decide the new patriarch. Of course, under normal circumstances the patriarch can be re-elected. But ever since you appeared, the situation has changed. Because if there is a new vote, you are almost 100% elected. Because countless people in the clan hope that you can obtain the core sacred relic of the clan. Zhou Xian asked, "What sacred relic?" The swordsman of Wuxia said in a deep voice, "The Taishu Temple. This is the #1 sacred relic of the Yi clan. It is said that it contains our clan's most powerful mental cultivation method, the Taishu Dao mantra." At that time, many elders hoped that you can obtain this sacred relic because you have created the Taishu Dao mantra. Many elders firmly believe that if you obtain this Taishu Dao mantra, not only will your strength undergo a tremendous change, you might even be able to improve the Taishu Dao mantra. Saying that, she looked at Zhou Xian and said, "Many people hope that you can obtain this sacred relic and bring the clan to new heights." Zhou Xian said softly, "Your patriarch doesn't want that, right?" The swordsman of Wuxia nodded. Yes. On the day of the new election, the patriarch suddenly rose in revolt. She gathered her confidants and sealed the entire Yi clan's ancestral shrine. Then she slandered you for colluding with the enemy and wanted to kill you on the spot. Zhou Xian said, "Did the elders disagree?" The swordsman of Wuxia nodded. "Disagree? Not only did the elders disagree, but so did your 18 brothers, the 18 divine generals. These 18 people were brought up by you. When they found out that you were trapped, the 18 divine generals brought thousands of subordinates and killed their way to the Yi clan. Not only that, but some elders also stood on your side." Zhou Xian was a little puzzled. "But they still lost?" The swordsman of Wuxia nodded. "I don't know what happened in the ancestral shrine. I only know that when you came out of the ancestral shrine, the 18 divine generals and the heavens guards were all killed in battle. Not only them, but dozens of elders were also killed. All of them died in battle?" Zhou Xian asked in a deep voice. The swordsman of Wuxia nodded. Her eyes had unknowingly turned scarlet. "When we arrived, they were all killed in battle. Not a single one survived." Zhou Xian said softly, "Logically speaking, if the patriarch of Yi clan won, the other party would never let God Yi live. So how did God Yi escape?" "It's all thanks to 3 people." The swordsman of Wuxia said in a deep voice. "Which 3?" Zhou Xian asked. Swordsman Mu said softly, "The first one was the Yi clan's protector. When the patriarch made a move against you, the Yi clan's protector wasn't present. However, when he heard that the patriarch had made a move against you, he immediately rushed back. Most of the people on your side have been killed." At that time, the protector only had 2 choices. The first one was to stand on your side. However, if he did that, the Yi clan would immediately split because the patriarch made it clear that if the protector stood on your side, she would perish together. If she perished together, the entire Yi clan would be consigned to eternal damnation. You should know that although our Yi clan was the strongest clan in the archaic boundary, there were other great clans in the archaic boundary. If we continued to fight, we would give others a chance. So the protector stood on the patriarch's side. Zhou Xian asked. The swordsman of Wuxia nodded. Yes. However, he had a request. He couldn't kill you. However, the patriarch didn't agree. Zhou Xian asked, "Did the second and third person play a role?" The swordsman of Wuxia nodded. The second person was Commander Yi Tian of our clan. He was in charge of a very elite clan army of our clan. In fact, speaking until here, she shook her head. Whether it's the protector or Commander Yi Tian, they're all on your side. At that time, you were in charge of the clan's heavens guards and had 18 divine generals following you to the death. If we were to fight head-on, we wouldn't have lost to the clan leader. Unfortunately, the clan leader sent Commander Yi Tian and Protector Yi Qian away. When they returned, it was already too late. That's because you guys had already started killing. Otherwise, if they were present when the patriarch made his move, they could have forced the patriarch to summon the ancestors and let the ancestors' souls resolve this matter. Only the patriarch has the right to summon the ancestors' souls. Zhou Xian was a little puzzled. I have a question. God Yi had already surpassed the patriarch in merits back then. Didn't he think that the patriarch would make a move against him? That shouldn't have happened. The swordsman of Mu Xing shook his head. Not only did the crown prince not think of it, but everyone in the Yi clan also didn't think of it. Therefore, when the crown prince went to the ancestral shrine, he didn't take any precautions. Yi Xian was even more puzzled. Why is that? The swordsman of Mu Xing looked at Yi Xian. Do you know who the patriarch is? Yi Xian shook his head. I definitely don't know. The swordsman of Mu Xing said softly. The patriarch is the crown prince's mother, biological mother. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they heard this. Biological mother. Yi Xian jumped up immediately. P.S. I've let everyone's weight down. I'm looking down on myself if I don't update. I've been too busy recently and only returned home at 1 o'clock last night. When one reaches a certain age, there are a lot of mundane things to do. I'm no longer the single handsome guy from back then. There's nothing else to do except write. Now the burden on my shoulders is too heavy. Sorry to keep everyone waiting. Chapter 1691. Biological Mother. Dao Yi and Yi Xian were dumbfounded. At that moment Yi Xian felt like he was about to explode. Yi Xian looked at Blade Saint Mu. Biological mother? Blade Saint Mu nodded. Yes. Yi Xian asked in a low voice. Why? Blade Saint Mu sighed softly and said nothing. Yi Xian asked again. Is she really biological? Blade Saint Mu nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was puzzled. If she's biological, why would she harm him? Blade Saint Mu looked at Yi Xian. Benefits. If the crown prince is elected clan leader, the previous clan leader must step down and hand over his authority as clan leader. Yi Xian frowned. Just because of authority? Blade Saint Mu nodded. The struggle within a large clan is 100 times crueler than the secular imperial family. Dao Yi suddenly said, There's one thing I don't understand. Master's mother should be an outsider. Since she's an outsider, how did she become the Yi clan leader? Blade Saint Mu shook his head. She's not an outsider. She's from the Yi clan and was once the most talented genius in the clan. The crown prince took his mother's surname. Dao Yi frowned. That means Master isn't a direct descendant of the Yi clan? Blade Saint Mu said, You can say that. However, no one in the Yi clan questions the crown prince's identity. He's not only a genius but he's also the current clan leader's son. Moreover, he grew up in the Yi clan and the entire clan recognizes his identity. However, no one expected that the crown prince's mother would use that reason to deny the crown prince and even slander him for colluding with the enemy. As she said that, she shook her head slightly. I'm afraid even the crown prince himself didn't expect that. Yi Xian shook his head. That mother isn't just any ordinary kind of ruthless. She's even more ruthless than my mother. He originally thought that he was miserable enough, especially when he was targeted by East Linen. However, he did not expect God Yi to be even more miserable than him. Back then, Southeast targeted him mainly because of a misunderstanding, but this God Yi was completely different. They wanted God Yi dead. Saber Saint Mu said softly, Crown Prince was too outstanding back then. He's so outstanding that he threatens his mother's position. Cold sweat suddenly appeared on Yi Xian's forehead. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. What's the matter? Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. I used to think that my dad was heartless and abandoned me. Now, compared to God Ye's mother, I suddenly realized that my dad is actually still human. Most importantly, my father was never afraid of me becoming stronger. On the contrary, he hoped that I would become stronger than him. Speaking to there, he paused before continuing. If my father was also afraid that I would become stronger and wanted to kill me. As he spoke, he shook his head repeatedly, not daring to think about it. Who could withstand this? At this time, Dao Yi suddenly smiled and said, Don't be afraid, you still have a sister. Xianxia. Hearing this, Yi Xian instantly laughed. That's right. If my dad wants to kill me, Xianxia will definitely kill him. At this time, Xiaota suddenly said, Young master, it's not right for you to think of master that way. Yi Xian's face darkened. Xiaota, if you dare to complain, I'll castrate you. Xiaota was speechless. Dao Yi shook her head and smiled. She looked at Saber Saint Mu. Tell me about the third person. Saber Saint Mu said in a deep voice. It's the crown prince's former fiancée, the eldest daughter of the Hera clan Herayan. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Fiancé?" Saber Saint Mu nodded. It's normal for large clans to unite by marriage. At that time the Yi clan wanted to consolidate our position, so we had a marriage alliance with the Hera clan. When we arrived you were already surrounded. Even Guardian Yi Tian and Commander Yi Qian could not stop us from killing you. At that time Miss Herayan arrived with the Hera clan's powerhouses. She was the one who forcefully protected you. Dao Yi was puzzled. The Hera clan interfered in the internal affairs of the Yi clan? And your clan leader compromised? Saber Saint Mu said softly, that woman had no choice but to compromise because Miss Herayan brought the Hera clan's ancestor's soul with her. In that situation that woman only had 3 choices. The first was to kill the crown prince. However, if she killed the crown prince she would have to pay a heavy price. The Hera clan's ancestor's soul is not something that an ordinary powerhouse can deal with. The second choice was to call the ancestor's soul. However, if she did that she would be finished immediately. Because the ancestor's soul would never allow her to harm the clan's genius. The third choice was to start a war with the Hera clan. However, the Yi clan had no chance of winning at that time. At that time the Yi clan was in a state of internal strife. The entire Yi clan was in a state of disintegration. Moreover, there were other clans eyeing the Yi clan covetously. Therefore that woman had no choice but to compromise. Dao Yi said in a deep voice, that woman compromised, but on the condition that the crown prince must not be in the immortal realm, right? Saber Saint Mu nodded. Yes. The crown prince must leave the immortal realm. Moreover, the crown prince's identity as the crown prince of the Yi clan was also taken away. In addition, speaking of this, her expression gradually became ferocious. The crown prince, your Yi clan bloodline, was also taken away on the spot. Yi Xian frowned. So, I'm not a member of the Yi clan now? Saber Saint Mu immediately said, the crown prince, you will always be a member of the Yi clan. Even if your bloodline is taken away it will not change. Yi Xian looked at Saber Saint Mu. What was God Yi thinking at that time? Saber Saint Mu was silent. Dao Yi suddenly said, Master never thought of revenge. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi said softly, if he wanted revenge he would not have protected this universe, let alone adopted us. Saber Saint Mu nodded. The crown prince indeed never thought of revenge. At that time the crown prince was a little disheartened. Saying that she sighed softly. After all, she was his biological mother. Idiot. Yi Xian shook his head. I think this God Yi is more than just an ordinary idiot. Dao Yi and the other 2 looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian sneered. What mother? If it were me I would have asked the Hera clan to support me to fight the Yi clan. If that doesn't work, I would have gone to the Yi clan's enemy and destroyed them. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Saber Saint Mu and Avicii swordsman looked at each other with excitement in their eyes. Yi Xian sighed softly. In fact he felt that God Yi was quite pitiful. No one would be able to stand being treated like that by their own mother. However, to be honest, that mother was really amazing. Under normal circumstances, most mothers would want their sons to be outstanding. However, not only did that mother not want her son to be better than her, but she also wanted to kill her own son. Her biological son. At that thought, Yi Xian suddenly felt that the green-robed man was quite a good person. At the very least his father had never wanted to kill him. At that moment Saber Saint Mu suddenly said excitedly, Prince, when are we going back to the Yi clan? Yi Xian glanced at Saber Saint Mu and was a little speechless. Do you think we have the strength to go back to the Yi clan now? Saber Saint Mu fell silent and his expression gradually turned ugly. If God Yi had done that back then, there would have been great hope because God Yi had high prestige in the Yi clan at that time. Moreover, he had the help of the Hera clan. Now that so many years had passed, the Yi clan must have been purged. If they went back now, everything would be the same but the people would be different. Moreover, Yi Xian had yet to awaken and was very weak. Yi Xian smiled and said, Don't be discouraged. Saber Saint Mu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian chuckled and said, If the Yi clan doesn't let me go, then I will definitely go to the eternal world. Saber Saint Mu sighed softly. Prince, you're too weak now. Yi Xian's face darkened. Can't you be a little more tactful with your words? Saber Saint Mu was speechless. Dao Yi also said, Our main goal now is to deal with the alien dimensional race. Alien dimensional race. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Let's deal with the alien dimensional race first. As for the Yi clan, let's put them aside for now. As he said that, he looked at Saber Saint Mu. Do you know what old subordinates God Yi had back then? Saber Saint Mu shook his head. Even if they haven't been purged, we can't go looking for them. If we go looking for them, it's very likely that we'll be discovered by the Yi clan. Yi Xian said softly, it seems that we can only rely on ourselves. As he said that, he looked at the distant lakeside. There were more than 460 pseudo-intent realm experts there. If all of them could attain intent realm, then they would have a fighting chance against the alien dimensional race. At that moment, the law of time suddenly appeared. The alien dimensional race is breaking the seal. They're going to attack us. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. How long can the seal last? The law of time looked at Yi Xian. It might break right away. Yi Xian turned to look at the pseudo-intent realm experts by the lakeside. How much more time do they need? Dao Yi glanced at them and said, at least half a month. Yi Xian said, we have to drag it out for another half a month. As he said that, he transformed into a ray of sword light and disappeared into the horizon. Dao Yi and the others also disappeared on the spot. A short while later, Yi Xian and the others arrived at the starry sky where the seal was. At that moment, the strange runes in the surroundings had dimmed to the point that they were almost gone. Powerful auras kept surging out from the black vortex. Yi Xian looked at the black vortex. At that moment, a woman walked out. It was Yuya. Yuya looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi, we meet again. As she spoke, she gazed at Dao Yi. Dao Yi, don't you care about your younger sister's life or death? Dao Yi frowned. Yuya snapped her fingers and then a woman was brought over. It was Dao Yi's younger sister, a Gu. At this moment, a Gu's entire body was nailed by soul-boring spikes. A Gu's voice trembled when he saw Dao Yi. Big sister. Save me. Dao Yi remained silent. Yi smiled. Dao Yi, you're a genius of my clan, so my clan naturally won't abandon you. So long as you're willing to return to the clan, then we can let bygones be bygones. Dao Yi suddenly walked towards a Gu. She arrived in front of a Gu, and a trace of a complicated expression flashed through her eyes as she gazed at a Gu. A Gu. A Gu instantly started crying. Big sister, save me. Meanwhile, a dagger suddenly appeared in Dao Yi's hand. Gu hadn't even reacted when the dagger swept past his throat. His blood sprayed from a Gu's throat. Everyone present was stunned, including Yi Xian. Chapter 1692. Kill. Everyone was looking at Dao Yi. Dao Yi walked up to Yi Xian and smiled. Surprised. Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi shook his head. She is no longer the little sister I knew. The current her only wants me dead. Yi Xian was silent. Indeed, a Gu wanted Dao Yi to die from the beginning. Dao Yi said softly, I also understand. I don't owe her anything. Back then I betrayed Master for her. Now I suddenly feel that it wasn't worth it. It really wasn't worth it. Saying this, tears flowed down from her eyes. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. He knew that Dao Yi had given up. He had given up on the alien race and his little sister. Especially towards this Gu. She had sacrificed so much for this Gu, yet this Gu wholeheartedly wanted her dead. Bitterly disappointed. At the side, Yi looked at Dao Yi and did not say anything. She knew that Dao Yi would no longer have any relationship with the alien race. Dao Yi turned to look at Yuya. Military advisor Yuya, don't play these cheap tricks in the future. Because doing so is really degrading. Yi smiled. All right. Saying this, she looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, are you ready? Yi Xian said with a smile. Come on. Yuya's lips curled up. As you wish. As soon as she finished speaking, she snapped her fingers. Boom. The seals in the surroundings suddenly disappeared bit by bit. At the same time, the black vortex began to tremble violently. Gradually, countless illusory figures appeared in the surrounding space. Alien race experts. Yi looked at Yi Xian. Kill. There was no nonsense. This time their goal was very clear. They wanted to kill Yi Xian first, then devour this universe. All of the alien dimensional race powerhouses charged towards Yi Xian. Obviously, he didn't want to give Yi Xian any chance. Dao Yi's eyes narrowed slightly and he was about to attack. However, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Allow me." Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian took a step forward and slowly closed his eyes. His body began to tremble. Boom. Two giant dragons suddenly flew out from Yi Xian's arms. One gold and one black. The two dragons rapidly expanded and engulfed the entire starry sky. Countless alien dimensional race experts were forced to retreat. Seeing the two dragons, Yuya frowned. Sky Fey Kingdom. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Crescent and she immediately clenched her right hand tightly when she saw this scene. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had already charged in front of her, and then he drew his sword and slashed. The moment the sword slashed out, the entire starry sky trembled. 135 superimposed sword drawing techniques. Moreover, it was enhanced by the power of his bloodline. This sword strike could be said to be Yi Xian's current limit. Of course, he didn't utilize the power of the beast god. If he did, then it would be even stronger. Yuya's expression changed drastically when she sensed how terrifying Yi Xian's sword strike was. Yi Xian wants to end her with a single strike. She didn't think too much about it and suddenly pressed her hands together. In an instant, a strange beam of light appeared above her head. Bang! Yuya was blasted 3 kilometers back by Yi Xian's sword strike, and Yi Xian was blasted flying by the formidable force. After he stopped, Yi Xian glanced at his slightly numb hand, and then he looked at the beam of light above Yuya's head. Dao Yi suddenly said, "Timeline." Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi and Dao Yi said solemnly, "She's an expert above intent, or in other words, the Eternity Realm. Eternity Realm experts can materialize the dimension of time, or in other words, the timeline." Timeline. Yi Xian turned to look at Yuya, who had a smear of blood at the corner of her mouth. Although that sword strike just now didn't kill Yuya, it still injured her. At that moment, Yuya was extremely shocked. She didn't expect that even after she took out the timeline, she would still be injured by Yi Xian. The power of Yi Xian's sword strike was actually this strong. Monster. Too monstrous. This guy isn't any weaker than God Yi from back then. Thinking of this, a trace of killing intent flashed in Yuya's eyes. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, countless alien dimensional race experts in the starry sky dashed towards Yi Xian and the others. The two dragons summoned by Yi Xian were directly stalled. Seeing so many alien race experts rushing over, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. It was impossible for him to resist so many alien race experts by himself. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes and said softly, "Senior, help me." The beast god said, "Are you ready?" Yi Xian nodded. "Come." The beast god smiled. "Then come." Boom. A powerful force suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. At that moment, the starry sky within hundreds of thousands of kilometers began to seethe. Yi Xian's face instantly contorted. At that moment he felt as if his body was about to explode. In the distance, Yuya frowned. Why did this guy's aura increase again? At this moment, Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. Boom. The surrounding starry sky began to be annihilated inch by inch. Yi Xian suddenly roared and smashed his fist down. Rumble. In an instant, a powerful force erupted from Yi Xian's fist. This explosion was like a volcanic eruption, causing the entire starry sky to shatter. As for the few alien race experts at the very front, their souls were destroyed on the spot. Because this force didn't just destroy space, it even destroyed the temporal dimension of the starry sky. Yuya glanced coldly at Yi Xian and was about to attack. However, a voice suddenly resounded by her ear. "Allow me." As soon as the voice resounded, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian's pupils constricted and he swiftly smashed his fist forward. The middle-aged man smashed his fist forward as well. It was a head-on collision. As soon as their fists collided. Rumble. A deafening explosion suddenly resounded in the battlefield, and Yi Xian instantly retreated tens of thousands of feet away. However, the middle-aged man didn't move an inch. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, his body had split open, but it quickly repaired itself. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the middle-aged man in the distance. Dao Yi said in a low voice, "The patriarch of the alien race, Li Shixin." Yi Xian frowned. "A human's name?" Dao Yi shook his head. "This is a translated name. As for the alien race's name, you wouldn't understand it even if I told you." Yi Xian was speechless. Dao Yi said in a low voice, "How do you feel now?" Yi Xian looked at his body. Although he had the immortal bloodline and purple aura to repair himself, he still felt very uncomfortable. His internal organs were damaged. Yi Xian looked at Li Shixin in the distance. Even the patriarch of the alien race had appeared. Li Shixin looked at Yi Xian. "God Yi, compared to before, you're so much weaker now." Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand and asked in his heart, "Senior Beast God, how much power can I borrow from you now?" After a moment of silence, Beast God said, 20%. This is the limit you can reach at the moment. Moreover, if you borrow 20% of my power, your body might not be able to withstand it. Most importantly, even if you borrow 20% of my power, you won't be able to fight against the alien race's patriarch with your current strength. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He had to fight even if he couldn't win. At that moment, Beast God suddenly smiled. "Kid, I'll help you deal with this person." Yi Xian was stunned. The Beast God laughed heartily. "Didn't I lose to you once in a bet? Now I'll help you deal with this person to repay that favor. What do you think? Of course, I won't be able to defeat this person in my current state. At most, I can only hold him back." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Thank you, Senior." Beast God smiled. Then the arm guards in Yi Xian's hands suddenly flew out. In the distance, Li Shixin frowned and pointed his finger forward. Rumble. The arm guards were forced to stop. At that moment, a figure suddenly floated out from Beast God's arm. It was Beast God. Beast God sent a punch straight at Li Shixin. Brute force. Li Shixin frowned. He didn't dodge and he just smashed his fist towards Beast God. Rumble. As soon as their fists collided, a powerful wave of energy swept through the starry sky. Everyone here was blasted back repeatedly, and that included Yi Xian. Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. The wave of energy in front of him was slashed apart. Yi Xian gazed at Beast God and Crescent Moon with an extremely solemn expression in his eyes. The strength of these two people was not an ordinary kind of ferocious. Meanwhile, Beast God's voice resounded, "Kid, don't just stand there and watch. I can only hold him back for a while. Hurry up and do whatever you want." Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly and then he turned to look at Crescent Moon. Crescent Moon smiled. "You want to kill me first?" Yi Xian walked towards Crescent Moon while holding his sword tightly in his left hand. At this moment his blood started to boil. Bloodline energy. In the distance, Crescent Moon's smile gradually disappeared. As soon as she finished speaking, the space on both sides suddenly split apart. The next moment, the space around Yi Xian started to undulate like waves. At this moment, Dao Yi suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and pressed her palm down. Rumble. The space around Yi Xian split apart and numerous afterimages flew out. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian and said, "Disaster and the rest will hold him back. Be careful." After saying that, she charged forward and the space around her started to boil. The power of the time dimension. Yi Xian glanced at Dao Yi. Only now did he realize that Dao Yi's main body was extraordinarily strong. Without hesitation, Yi Xian charged towards Crescent Moon. Crescent Moon narrowed her eyes and clenched her right hand. She was about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly changed direction and charged towards the black vortex. Crescent Moon's expression changed drastically. "Don't you dare." As she spoke, she charged towards Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Boom. As soon as his sword descended, the black vortex spatial passageway exploded. Meanwhile, Crescent Moon had already charged over, and Yi Xian turned around and slashed down with his sword. Rumble. Crescent Moon was sent flying. Crescent Moon stared at Yi Xian with an extremely unsightly expression. Yi Xian smiled lightly. "Looks like I made the right bet. It must have taken a lot of effort to build this spatial passageway, right?" Crescent Moon looked at Yi Xian. "Do you think you can stop us just like that? Building a spatial passageway is just a matter of time for us." A bit of time. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Right now all he needed was this bit of time. In the distant sky, Li Shixin suddenly stopped. He looked at Beast God and said, "Sky Demon Empire." Beast God smiled and said, "Yes." Li Shixin shook his head. "Is it worth it to become enemies with my dimensional race for a human?" Beast God laughed and said, "I think it's too damn worth it." Li Shixin. "Peace. I've been working hard to save up. House loan, car loan, milk powder. The pressure is huge. It wasn't easy to live. Chapter 1693. Alien race? In fact, the beast god didn't think that the alien race was weak. But who was he helping? Zhou Xian. Others might not know, but he knew how abnormal this guy's father was. Not to mention the alien race, even 10 of them wouldn't be a match for this guy's father. Although the green-robed man wanted Zhou Xian to face everything by himself, if Zhou Xian's life was really in danger, would he really not care? The reason why he helped Zhou Xian along the way was naturally to form a good karma. The green-robed man's rank was too high. Even if he wanted to form a good karma, he didn't have the chance. But Zhou Xian was different. The current Zhou Xian really needed his help. Helping Zhou Xian was equivalent to forming a relationship with the green-robed man. Was it worth it to offend the alien race for Zhou Xian? Yes. It was definitely worth it. Hearing the beast god's words, Xianxia frowned deeply. What made the heavenly demon nation's demon beasts help Zhou Xian? He couldn't understand. Could it be the 2 backers behind Zhou Xian? Thinking of this, Xianxia turned to look at Zhou Xian. At this moment he thought of Xijing. In the surroundings, the alien race experts were about to attack but were stopped by Xianxia. The alien race experts retreated behind Xianxia. Xianxia looked at Zhou Xian and said, "It seems we don't know enough about young Master Yi." Zhou Xian smiled and said, "I'm just an ordinary person." Xianxia looked at Zhou Xian. A moment later, Zhou Xian's body gradually became illusory. The surrounding alien race experts also disappeared bit by bit. Zhou Xian frowned. At this time the beast god suddenly said, "They escaped into the time dimension." Zhou Xian looked at the beast god and said, "Senior, many thanks." The beast god smiled and said, "No problem." With that he returned to the beast god's arm. Zhou Xian looked around. "Let's go." With that he led the crowd away. Somewhere in the time dimension, Xianxia looked at a phantom in front of him. "Tell me how Xijing was killed that day." The phantom said in a low voice. After a long time, Xianxia asked softly, "That white-haired lady killed Xijing with just one move?" The figure nodded. Xianxia was silent. At this moment Yuya suddenly said, "We can't find out who that woman is." Xianxia shook his head. The main point isn't the white-haired woman, but her attitude towards the plain-dressed woman. Crescent Moon looked at the phantom. "Is this respect?" The phantom nodded. "His attitude is quite respectful. Moreover, from the beginning until the end, that woman in a plain dress didn't even glance at Elder Xijing." Hearing this, Yuya's expression gradually turned serious. Xianxia said in a deep voice, "The white-haired woman's attitude towards the plain-dressed woman is respectful. This means that the plain-dressed woman's strength is above hers. Moreover, the plain-dressed woman didn't even glance at Xijing. This means that she doesn't put Xijing in her eyes at all. Whether it's the white-haired woman or the plain-dressed woman, I'm afraid that our alien race can't match their strength." Yuya frowned. "Strong to this extent?" Xianxia looked at Yuya. "Possibly even stronger." "Yuya." Xianxia looked into the distance. "The demon beast I fought with just now was only a soul. However, his strength wasn't any weaker than mine. In the Sky Demon Nation his status and position must not be low. Yet he was willing to follow this Zhou Xian." Saying this, he slowly closed his eyes. "The person behind this Zhou Xian isn't someone our race can match." Yuya said in a deep voice, "Are we going to give up on the origin of the great Tao and the spiritual energy of this universe?" Xianxia glanced at Yuya. "The lives of our clansmen are more important." Yuya slightly lowered her head and didn't say anything. Xianxia said, "Personally investigate that plain-dressed woman and Zhou Xian's father. I want details." Yuya nodded. "Okay." After saying this, she turned around and disappeared. A complicated look flashed through Xianxia's eyes. In the past it was God Yi and now it's this Zhou Xian. Is this heaven's punishment for our alien race? In the past the alien race had abundant spiritual energy, and the origin of the great Tao was also incomparably abundant. However, with the alien race's unrestrained devouring and squandering, the spiritual energy of the entire alien dimension began to dry up, and the origin of the great Tao completely disappeared. Not only that, but because of the alien race's strength, the alien race was the only race left in the entire alien dimension. All the other races were killed. Now the alien dimension could no longer survive. If they didn't devour a new world, the ones to die would be the alien race. After a while, Li Shixin turned around and left. Lakeside inside the bamboo house. At this moment, the expressions of Yi Xian and the others were somewhat solemn. Dao Yi said in a deep voice, "They might reinvestigate you." Yi Xian asked, "And then?" Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian and said, "Then they might directly inform the Yi clan and have them deal with you and the plain-dressed woman behind you. In this way they can sit back and reap the benefits. Although they might not be able to obtain the great Dao body in this way, they would be able to obtain this universe without taking any risks. Therefore they might inform the Yi clan." "Inform the Yi clan," Yi Xian said in a soft voice. "In that case our enemy will change from the alien race to the Yi clan?" Dao Yi nodded. "It depends on whether the alien race is greedy or stupid. However, the patriarch of the alien race is not a fool. Since he stopped just now, it's obvious that he wants to reinvestigate you. If the disadvantages of killing you outweigh the advantages, he will definitely not continue to target you. Instead, he will inform the Yi clan and have them fight you to the death. Therefore we must prepare for the worst." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "We must prepare for the worst." Mu Xing suddenly said, "Why don't I contact the subordinates of the former prince of the Yi clan?" Yi Xian shook his head. "That's not realistic. After you escaped with God Ye's mother's methods, the remaining people must have been dealt with. Even if they haven't been dealt with after so many years, those people may not be as loyal as before. Especially now, I have yet to awaken, so it's even more impossible for them to be loyal to me. Moreover, it's too dangerous for you to go to the Yi clan now." Mu Xing said in a deep voice, "Prince, what you said makes sense, but don't underestimate your influence in the clan." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Mu Xing, that was in the past. Many things can change, especially people's hearts. Moreover, even with the support of some subordinates, can they fight against that woman? Back then, God Yi was already defeated at his peak. At that time there were still many elders supporting him, but now? I'm willing to bet that in the Yi clan, all the elders who supported God Yi back then must have been dealt with." Mu Xing's expression turned a little ugly. "Then what should we do? Wait for death?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Rather than rely on others, I might as well rely on my father. At least my father should be reliable." At that moment Xiao Ta said excitedly, "Young master, are you going to use the sword master's token?" Yi Xian sighed softly. He took out the sword master's token and looked at it in his hand, then shook his head. "I don't really want to use it." Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. "Your father left it for you?" Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi said again, "You promised him not to use it?" Yi Xian shook his head. "No." Dao Yi said softly, "So you don't want to use it for yourself?" Yi Xian nodded. "I don't really want to." With that he smiled faintly. "Of course, if the Yi clan really wants to deal with me, I definitely won't care so much. The strength of the Yi clan is definitely not something he can fight against now. In that case he definitely won't care about anything. He can't wait for a few of his people to die before using it, right?" At this time Mu Xing suddenly said, "Can this token fight against the Yi clan?" Yi Xian glanced at the swordmaster's token in his hand and smiled. "It should be." Mu Xing hesitated for a moment and said, "Prince, I think you might have underestimated the Yi clan." Yi Xian looked at Mu Xing. Mu Xing said in a deep voice, "The alien race is very strong, but in front of the Yi clan they are really a small force. Even if the Yi clan is no longer the #1 clan in the immortal world, ordinary forces can't shake them. In fact, all the forces outside the immortal world are nothing in front of the Yi clan." At this time Xiao Ta suddenly jumped out and said, "Hey, are you looking down on Master?" Mu Xing said indifferently, "I don't mean to look down on anyone. I just want to let Prince know that the Yi clan is not an ordinary force. Prince can't put your hopes on others." "Bullshit." Xiao Ta jumped up. "Woman, the Yi clan is just a fart in front of Master. A fart. As long as you don't take the initiative to use the sword master's token, annihilating your Yi clan is just a matter of a finger." Mu Xing sneered, "You are the most boastful Ta I have ever seen." "Yi Xian." Xiao Ta jumped up and down in anger. "Woman, you actually said that I am boasting. You are pissing me off." Mu Xing ignored Xiao Ta and looked at Yi Xian. "Prince, you haven't awakened yet. You don't know how strong the Yi clan is. I can only say that you must not put your hopes on others. The forces outside the eternal world and the forces inside the eternal world are like heaven and earth. You must know that in the eternal world there is eternal qi. Those top experts have a lifespan of at least hundreds of thousands of years. They have lived for so long, their strength is not comparable to those outside. Yi Xian nodded. I know. Mu Xing looked at Yi Xian. What is Prince's plan? Yi Xian smiled and said, my plan is to carry it on my own. If I can't, then I will call for help. Mu Xing smiled bitterly. Prince, believe me, no matter who you call, it will be useless. Eternal World's Yi clan. On the side, Avicii also said, Prince, Mu Xing is not trying to scare you, nor is he looking down on Prince's father. It's just that the Yi clan is really strong. If you call for help, you will just be throwing away your life. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly roared, you guys are going to piss me off. As it spoke, it suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian and touched the Sword Master token lightly. Activate the Sword Master token now. Call someone over. After a moment of silence, a ray of sword light suddenly enveloped Xiaota. Moments later, the ray of sword light disappeared. At the same time, a voice suddenly sounded from the Sword Master token. Since you are not Master and you are not Master's direct descendant, you are not qualified to activate the Sword Master token. I'll give you 2 words. As it spoke, it paused for a moment before continuing, Scram. Everyone. Chapter 1694. Scram. Xiaota was dumbfounded. He actually told me to scram? How can I tolerate that? Xiaota charged towards the Sword Master token. Boom. Soon the Ta and the token started fighting. Yi Xian looked at the Sword Master token and was surprised. He did not expect the Sword Master token to be able to speak. That meant that the Sword Master token had a spirit. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly flew in front of Yi Xian and said with a trembling voice, Young Master, it hit me. Yi Xian smiled and said, You can hit it too. Xiaota hesitated and said, I don't think I can beat it. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the Sword Master token floated in front of Yi Xian and circled around Yi Xian as if it was sizing up Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the Sword Master token and did not speak. At this moment, the Sword Master token trembled slightly and landed steadily in Yi Xian's palm. Obviously, it recognized Yi Xian's identity. Yi Xian looked at the Sword Master token in his hand and fell into deep thought. Sword Alliance. A Sword Alliance. Yi Xian was puzzled. Could the Sword Alliance created by his father defeat the Yi clan? He was not confident. Of course, he was very confident in his father. However, his father's subordinates might not be very strong. Yi Xian sighed. He put away the Sword Master token and walked to the lakeside. At this moment he felt helpless. The harder he worked, the stronger the enemy would be. How could anyone live like this? Dao Yi suddenly walked to Yi Xian's side and turned to look at Yi Xian. She smiled and said, Do you find it difficult? Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand. It's okay. I'll go with you. Yi Xian turned to Dao Yi and smiled. We might die. Dao Yi blinked. Do I look like I'm afraid of death? Yi Xian laughed. I'm not afraid of death. But I don't want to die. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian, smiled and said, Then let's destroy the Leaf clan. Yi Xian laughed. Let's overturn the Leaf clan. Behind Yi Xian, Mu Xing sighed softly. Overturn the Yi clan? In fact, she really wanted to say that Yi Xian wanted to use external forces to overthrow the Yi clan. It was simply a fantasy. A master of the intent realm? In the Yi clan it was nothing. Back then she was also in the intent realm. However, she was not even qualified to enter the Yi clan. Who could defeat the Yi clan? Perhaps only the strongest clan in the past, the Moke Celestial clan, had the strength to do so. However, the Moke Celestial clan had been destroyed. At this time Yi Xian suddenly said, Disaster, have you found Sister Nian and the others? The Disaster Law shook its head. Still no. Yi Xian frowned. Disappeared. The Disaster Law said in a deep voice, They might not be in this universe anymore. Yi Xian looked at the Disaster Law. Not in this universe? The Disaster Law nodded. If they were in this universe it would be very easy to find them. However, I still can't find them. There is only one explanation. They have left this universe. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, If Sister Nian and Tu went somewhere else they would have told me. Unless they left in a hurry, Dao Yi suddenly said, Could it be that your father took them away? Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. What do you mean? Dao Yi said solemnly, doesn't your father have a force called the Sword Alliance? Both of them are swordsmen. Will they be taken by your father to join the Sword Alliance? Of course, this is just my guess. Yi Xian said softly, that's possible. He knew that his father and Butcher. They knew each other. Moreover, his father was very respectful to Tuesday. Suddenly, a woman appeared here. Time Law. The Law of Time looked at Yi Xian and the others and said, the alien dimensional race is currently reopening the spatial channel. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, are they going to send more experts over? Dao Yi suddenly said, it could also be a retreat. Everyone looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi raised his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. If they choose to retreat, it means that they are going to inform the Leaf clan. She then looked at Yi Xian. Now we can prepare for the worst. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky. It was the patriarch of the alien dimensional race, Li Shixin. Li Shixin looked down at Yi Xian and said, young Master Yi, we underestimated the person behind you. As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said softly, this universe is filled with spirit energy. Unfortunately, it's not fated with my alien dimensional race for now. Young Master Yi, welcome your new enemy. As soon as he finished speaking, his body gradually became illusory. Yi Xian hurriedly said, don't. Let's continue fighting. Li Shixin looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian was quite speechless. Damn it. Why did the enemy suddenly become so smart this time? They just stopped fighting. He wasn't used to it. Meanwhile, Li Shixin vanished. The Leaf clan. Yi Xian remained silent for a long time before he said, Avici Dao Muxing, tell me about the Leaf clan. Muxing nodded. The Leaf clan was once the #1 clan in Eternal Life World. Yi Xian suddenly said, what rank does intent belong to the Leaf clan? Muxing glanced at Yi Xian and said, it belongs to doing odd jobs. Yi Xian lay down and slowly closed his eyes. Let's not talk about it for now. Let me calm down. As he spoke, he pulled the hand of the Law of Life and placed it on his head. Help me treat it, I have a headache, everyone. Somewhere in the starry sky, a figure was constantly shuttling through the starry sky. Just like this, about a day later, the figure suddenly arrived in a deathly silent starry sky. In this deathly silent starry sky, there were countless corpses floating. They were densely packed and covered the entire starry sky. The death chi here was so dense that it was almost tangible. Even an intent realm expert would find it difficult to bear. The figure carefully avoided the death chi and slowly walked into the distance. About an hour later, he saw a white stone gate. The Gate of Eternal Life. Through this gate, one could reach the legendary Eternal Life world. And around the Gate of Eternal Life, there were even more corpses. Each of the corpses was at least at the intent realm, and there were countless Eternity realm experts. These people all wanted to enter the Eternal Life world. However, all of them had been killed. Eternal Life world. The aura of eternal life was something countless cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. Even the alien dimensional race was tempted, but they didn't dare to have any thoughts about it. Right at this moment, the door of eternal life suddenly trembled, and then a man walked out from within it. The man looked at the alien dimensional race in front of him with a cold expression. The alien dimensional race hurriedly bowed respectfully. I come from the alien dimension and I have an important matter to report to the Yi clan. The man was expressionless. Speak. The alien dimensional race hurriedly said, Yi clan's god Yi has returned. Hearing this, the man's pupils shrank. At this time, the space around the alien dimensional race suddenly turned into a black vortex, and the alien dimensional race disappeared without a trace. In the field, the man's expression was somewhat unsightly. A moment later, he turned around and left. That alien dimensional race suddenly appeared in a large hall. The hall was extremely quiet. As if he had discovered something, the alien dimensional race suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. Not far away, a woman was sitting there. She looked to be in her 30s, wore a black dress and had a blood pattern drawn between her eyebrows. The alien dimensional race immediately bowed respectfully. Greetings, patriarch of the Yi clan. The woman in front of him was the patriarch of the Yi clan, Yi Lingtian. She was also one of the 4 great experts of the eternal life world. Yiling Tian didn't say anything, and instead focused on reading the memorials in her hands. The alien dimensional race stood in the middle of the hall with his head slightly lowered, not daring to even breathe loudly. Although he was an expert of intent at this moment, he felt as insignificant as a speck of dust. After a long time, Yiling Tian placed the memorials in her hands to the side and looked at the alien dimensional race below. Still alive. The alien dimensional race hurriedly replied respectfully, yes. Yiling Tian stood up and walked towards the alien dimensional race. The alien dimensional race's body immediately trembled. At this moment he felt as if hundreds of thousands of mountains were crushing him. Yiling Tian looked at the alien dimensional race in front of him. Reincarnation. The alien dimensional race nodded again and replied with a trembling voice, yes. Yiling Tian slowly closed his eyes. Come out. As soon as he finished speaking, 6 black-robed people suddenly appeared in front of Yiling Tian. The 6 of them simultaneously knelt on the ground. Yiling Tian remained expressionless. Aren't you going to explain? The leader of the black-robed people said hoarsely, Patriarch, that day we saw him being killed by that woman with our own eyes. Yiling Tian looked at the black-robed people. Are they all dead? The black-robed people's bodies began to tremble. Yiling Tian calmly said, it seems that they aren't all dead. The black-robed people immediately knelt on the ground again. I hope that Patriarch can give us a chance to atone for our crimes. Yiling suddenly said, drag them away and feed them to the dogs. As she spoke, she walked towards the entrance of the distant hall. As soon as Yiling Tian's voice fell, an invisible hand suddenly swept across the hall, and the 6 black-robed people were directly swept away. The alien dimensional race's body trembled even more violently. Those 6 people were all Eternity Realm experts. They were killed just like that. Yiling Tian walked to the entrance of the hall. She looked at the distant horizon where there was a white cloud floating. The sky was very blue. Behind her, the alien dimensional race didn't even dare to breathe loudly. A moment later, Yiling Tian suddenly said, Xianxia. As soon as the voice fell, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far from Yiling Tian. The middle-aged man respectfully bowed. Patriarch. Yiling Tian expressionlessly said, do you know what to do? Xianxia slightly nodded. Understood. After saying that, he turned around and left. At this time, Yiling suddenly said, wait. Xianxia stopped. Yiling Tian calmly said, I'm afraid that Hello Woman already knows about this matter. You must be mentally prepared. Xianxia nodded. All right. Yiling Tian then said, everything related to him must be erased. I don't want to hear anything about him. Xianxia slightly bowed, then turned around and left. Yiling Tian looked at the distant horizon, the corner of her mouth slightly raised. My good son, you really don't let your mother rest easy. You can even die cleanly. Her voice was very gentle, but her smile was very cold. P.S. Right, there's a reader. Mountains, rivers and seas. Say sorry. I didn't do what I promised you. I'm really sorry. If you can read this, remember to add me again. I'll give you a pair of couple bracelets with your wife. I'll give you a couple bracelet as compensation. Chinger style. I'm really sorry. FPZW. Chapter 1695. On a mountain peak, a man walked quickly to a cave. At that moment, an old man stood in front of the man. The man bowed slightly. Elder Qi, I have something to report to the young mistress. The old man shook his head. The young mistress is in seclusion. Nothing can disturb her. The man said in a deep voice, God Yi is back. Boom. The door of the cave suddenly shattered and a woman slowly walked out. The woman wore a long black dress. Her long hair draped over her shoulders and her face was peerless. However, her eyes were cold and unfriendly. The woman walked in front of the man. Where is he? The man said in a deep voice, Young mistress, he has reincarnated. The woman slowly closed her eyes and a cold, killing intent suddenly swept across the sky. Boom. In an instant, the white clouds in the sky turned into nothingness. The woman suddenly walked into the distance. At that moment, Elder Qi suddenly said, Yen, do you really want to continue to intervene in the Yi clan's affairs? The woman stopped. Second uncle, I can't ignore him. Elder Qi sighed softly. Yen, he was a genius back then. In order to win him over, the family was willing to follow you to deal with the Yi clan. However, things are different now. That woman from the Yi clan has already eliminated his supporters in the Yi clan. Moreover, she has already reached that level. Let alone the current god Yi, even if the previous god Yi returns, it will be useless. The woman slowly closed her eyes. Elder Qi said again, now the Hera clan will no longer be enemies with the Yi clan because it is no longer worth it. The woman nodded, I know. Elder Qi sighed softly, girl, his time is over. The woman shook her head, second uncle, I must save him. Elder Qi asked, even if you save him, so what? Can you save him for the rest of his life? That woman from the Yi clan has a heart of poison that is rarely seen in the world. She will not let him go. Back then she did not dare to start a war with the Hera clan because of the internal strife of the Yi clan. However, the situation is different now. If the Hera clan dares to protect God Yi, she will definitely start a war with us. The woman did not speak. Elder Qi sighed softly, girl, you also have to consider the family. Moreover, you have been very kind to him. The woman looked at the distant sky. Second uncle, if I leave the Hera clan, that woman will definitely know. Can you make a trip for me? Mr. Qi sighed again. The woman said softly, please. Old Qi's expression was complicated. Girl, is he that good? The woman shook her head. I was engaged to him. As long as he doesn't personally cancel the engagement, I will always be his fiancé. Break off the engagement. Elder Qi was silent for a long time before he said, I'll go. The woman said, thank you. Elder Qi said in a deep voice, girl, the strength of the Yi clan woman is already a mystery. You must not leave the Hera clan easily. Understand? The woman looked at the horizon, her eyes cold, and she didn't say anything. Mr. Qi didn't say anything. He turned around and disappeared at the end of the sky. On the peak of the mountain, the woman just looked at the sky. The coldness in her eyes gradually turned into confusion. In the bamboo house by the lake, Zhou Xian was sitting on a chair quietly reading a book. A Vichy swordsman and saber shepherd saint were standing behind him. Seeing how calm Zhou Xian was, Saint Mu couldn't help but ask, Prince, do you have any countermeasures? Zhou Xian put down the ancient book and said with a smile, there's no countermeasure. The Yi clan is so strong that I can't beat them. Saint Mu frowned slightly, then why aren't you panicking? Zhou Xian sighed softly, what's the use of panicking? Saint Mu, do you think that the Yi clan woman will let me go if I beg for mercy? Saint Mu shook his head. Zhou Xian spread his hands, that's it. Even if I beg for mercy, she won't let me go. Anyway, she won't let me go no matter what. What's the use of panicking? Saint Mu said in a deep voice, then what are you going to do? Zhou Xian smiled, if the alien clan comes to attack me, I'll fight to the end. If the Yi clan comes to attack me, I'll call for help. It's that simple. Saint Mu sighed softly, Prince, you know nothing about the Yi clan's strength. On the side, Dao Yi suddenly smiled. Saint Mu, how much do you know about Master's father? Saint Mu shook his head, I don't know. Dao Yi smiled slightly, I know that the Yi clan is very strong, so strong that even Intent Realm is an ant. However, I believe in Master's father. How terrifying was the green-robed man? She didn't know. However, she felt that even if the green-robed man faced the Yi clan, he definitely wouldn't be weak. Of course, she didn't dare to say that the green-robed man was stronger than the Yi clan. After all, the Yi clan was an aristocratic clan that even Intent Realm was an ant. Saint Mu said again, Prince, are you sure that your father in this life is stronger than the Yi clan? Zhou Xian shook his head, I'm not sure. Saint Mu frowned and was about to speak, but Zhou Xian said again, that's not something I should consider. Saint Mu was a little confused, not something you should consider? Zhou Xian nodded. Saint Mu asked, then who should consider? Zhou Xian spread his hands, of course it's something my father should consider. Saint Mu was dumbfounded, Prince, what if your father can't beat the Yi clan? Zhou Xian thought for a moment, then said, if he can't beat them, then I can only send him off. Everyone was speechless. Saint Mu shook his head, Prince, you're so filial. Zhou Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta suddenly said, young master, aren't you afraid of being beaten by master? Zhou Xian smiled, if he can't beat them, then I can only send him off. Of course, after sending him off, it's my turn. Everyone was speechless. Saint Mu glanced at Yi Xian. Prince, are you ready to admit defeat? Yi Xian shook his head. No. Saint Mu was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, Saint Mu, I said to call for help, but you said that the people I called can't beat the Yi clan. Tell me, what should I do now? Saint Mu was silent. Yi Xian sighed softly. It's too hard for me. First I was almost killed by my mother. Now there's another mother and each one is stronger than the last. As he said that, he shook his head. He had always felt that he was miserable, but now he felt that God Yi was even more miserable than him. His mother harmed him because of a misunderstanding. After the misunderstanding was resolved, they had reconciled. However, this God Yi was different. This God Yi's mother really wanted to kill him. No one would have a good time if their own mother did that to them. Being too outstanding was not a good thing either. Especially in such a large family or a secular emperor's family. The emperor's family had no familial ties, but was it not the same in a large family? At that thought, Yi Xian thought of his father again. His father was actually quite good. At least, his father hoped that he was better than him. It had to be said that reincarnation was very important. At that moment, a powerful aura suddenly rose into the sky from the lake in the distance. Yi Xian and the others turned to look. By the lake, an old man stood up. He had reached the realm of intent. The old man took a deep breath. After a while he looked at his hands, his eyes full of excitement. Intent. He had finally reached the realm of intent. Huh. The old man could not help but laugh. Soon the old man seemed to have thought of something and suddenly looked at Yi Xian in the distance. He quickly ran to Yi Xian and bowed respectfully. Thank you, young master Yi. Yi Xian smiled and said, Congratulations. The old man quickly said, It's all thanks to young master Yi's promotion. He finally understood. In this world one had to learn how to flatter sometimes. The better the flatterer, the better the future. Yi Xian smiled and said, What's your next plan? The old man quickly said, I'm willing to follow young master Yi and serve you faithfully. Yi Xian was about to speak when someone broke through in the distance. Yi Xian looked at the pseudo-intent powerhouses sitting by the lake and found that everyone's aura was getting stronger. Obviously, more and more people would reach the realm of intent. As these people reached the realm of intent, the strength of this universe would also rise to a higher level. However, the enemy had now become the Yi clan. In front of the Yi clan, these intent powerhouses were not even worth looking at. Thinking of this, Yi Xian sighed in his heart. These people had not yet been cultivated into intent powerhouses, but they were already cannon fodder level existences. Damn. Not only these people, but he was also about to become cannon fodder. How long had it been since he broke through? Not even half a year had passed. In other words, his father had only been gone for a few months and he had gone from a top powerhouse to cannon fodder. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian opened his palm and Xiao Ta appeared in his hand. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Ta. Were my father's enemies that strong? Xiao Ta was silent for a moment and said, Master's life was worse than yours. However, his enemies were basically normal. Even if they were strong, they were not much stronger than him. Even if they were much stronger, he could basically beat them if he went crazy. As for you, young master, I think it's useless even if you go crazy. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta laughed mischievously. Young master, although master had people to help him most of the time, he fought for it himself. As for you, young master, you basically won without doing anything. Yi Xian's face immediately darkened. Xiao Ta also realized that what he said was wrong and immediately said, Of course, young master, your enemies are not normal. It's normal for you to need help. Yi Xian suddenly said, Xiao Ta, back then Qing and father were enemies? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, Yes. That sister Zhou Xian was so terrifying. Yi Xian was a little curious. How terrifying? Xiao Ta said, Back then master was beaten very badly. Yi Xian asked again, As far as I know, Qing seemed to want to destroy the world. In the end, was it father who stopped her? Xiao Ta nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was puzzled. Didn't dad lose to Qing in the beginning? How did it end up in a tie again? Xiao Ta said nothing. Yi Xian asked, You don't know either? Xiao Ta thought for a moment and said, According to the Milky Way realm, master should have the protagonist's halo. Actually, young master, you might also have. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1696. Protagonist's halo. Daoyi was curious. Xiao Ta, what do you mean by protagonist halo? Xiao Ta thought for a while and explained. Simply put, no matter what danger the protagonist encounters, he will not die. Not only will he not die, he will also become stronger and stronger. Everything in the world revolves around him. That's about it. Dao Yi was puzzled. No matter what, he will not die. Cao said. Yes. Dao Yi shook his head and smiled. That's too unbelievable. Yi Xian smiled. Xiao Ta, why do you say I have protagonist halo too? Cao said. It's just a feeling. If Master has protagonist halo and you also have protagonist halo, then your family will have two protagonist halos. As he spoke, Xiao Ta became even more excited. With two protagonist halos, you will be invincible. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. If I have protagonist halo, then who gave it to me? Xiao Ta did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled. You don't know either? Xiao Ta thought for a long time. I have a bold idea. Yi Xian was curious. What idea? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice. Young master, have you read any ancient chivalrous books? Yi Xian said. I've read some before. What? Xiao Ta said excitedly. Young master, do you think this world belongs to someone? At this moment the sky in the distance suddenly split open. Boom. A formless power swept down in an instant. In an instant the heavens and the earth were boiling. Yi Xian and the rest looked up. Inside the prison pagoda, Xiao Ta was hiding in a corner and shivering. At that moment it suddenly had a bad premonition. Xiao Ta said with a trembling voice, I don't dare to talk nonsense anymore. Big brother, don't arrange for me. I still want to live for a few more years. Mu Sheng, who was standing beside Yi Xian, looked at the sky with a solemn expression. The Yi clan is here. Yi Xian looked at the sky with a calm expression. In the sky, a middle-aged man walked out. Monk Tribulation. Beside Yi Xian, Mu Sheng said solemnly, one of the three heavenly generals under that woman. Her strength is extremely terrifying. It was extremely terrifying. Yi Xian looked at Xianxia. Indeed, this person gave him a feeling that he was more dangerous than Li Shixin. The Yi clan was not simple. In the horizon, Xianxia looked at Yi Xian with a calm expression. Prince, you still haven't awakened? How boring. Down below, Saint Mu mocked. Xianxia, if the prince had awakened, would you have dared to come alone? In the past, you were as lowly as a dog in front of the crown prince, have you forgotten? Xianxia shook his head. The past is the past, the present is the present. Heir apparent, the clan chief isn't happy that you're still alive. She said that this time you will disappear from this world. Not only you but everything related to you will also disappear. Yi Xian said with a smile. He is going to kill all of us. Xianxia looked around and said softly, Prince, this is indeed a good place to rest. Then he looked at Yi Xian. Prince, do you want to do it yourself or should I do it? Yi Xian smiled. Is the Yi clan always so long-winded when killing people? Xianxia looked at Yi Xian. The outcome has been decided. He did not like to be long-winded. He looked around and did not sense any powerful aura in this universe. In other words, there will be no accidents this time. Something is not right. Xianxia looked at the beast god's arm on Yi Xian's arm. There is a powerful soul in this thing. Come out and take a look. At this time the beast god's voice suddenly resounded and the beast god appeared above Yi Xian. Xianxia looked at the beast god calmly, not particularly weak. The beast god smiled. Don't you think it is too early to say that the outcome has been decided? Xianxia smiled. Even if he awakens now, he will not be able to make a comeback after being deprived of his bloodline. The beast god laughed. Is the Yi clan really invincible in the universe? Xianxia was expressionless. I dare not say we are invincible, but the number of people qualified to be my Yi clan's opponent is less than 5. Heavenly Monster Nation is even less qualified. The beast god smiled. I would like to ask for advice. Xianxia nodded. Come. The beast god suddenly disappeared. In the distance, Xianxia waved his hand and in an instant, the entire sky turned into a strange river. Below, Mu Sheng's expression was solemn. The river of time. He actually cultivated the river of time. Yi Xian looked at Mu Sheng. What is the river of time? Mu Sheng said solemnly. It's an extremely terrifying divine ability that can completely materialize the time dimension and use it. Saying so, she looked at the sky. Prince, run. Yi Xian shook his head. Where do I run? Mu Xing looked at Yi Xian. Then what do we do? Yi Xian smiled. Let's wait and see first. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly said, Xiao Ta, where did you run off to? Inside the prison pagoda, Xiao Ta was still hiding in a corner. Yi Xian summoned Lil Pagoda. Looking at Lil Pagoda, he said with a smile, Lil Pagoda, do I really have that so-called protagonist halo? Xiao Ta shook his head. Young lord, I don't know anything, don't ask me. Saying so, he directly ran back into the prison pagoda. Yi Xian was stunned. What was wrong with Xiao Ta? At this moment, the sky suddenly split open. The next moment, a figure landed in front of Yi Xian and the others. It was the beast god. Yi Xian looked at the beast god. It's already over? Mu Xing suddenly said, they have been fighting for at least a few hundred days. A few hundred days. Yi Xian. In the sky, the monk Tribulation also appeared. He looked down at the beast god below. I underestimated you. The beast god laughed. He looked at Yi Xian. My main body is not here. I can't do anything to this person, kid. I tried my best. Next, it's your turn to perform. Yi Xian looked at the monk Tribulation. He smiled. I want to ask a question, don't mind me. Is your patriarch really my biological mother in my previous life? The monk Tribulation looked at Yi Xian. Yes. Yi Xian said again. Could it be a misunderstanding? For example, she wanted to train me, so she did this to me? The monk Tribulation stared at Yi Xian. I think you might be thinking too much. Yi Xian frowned. Do you have a son? The monk Tribulation frowned. What do you want to ask? Yi Xian said seriously. Your Excellency, if your son is too outstanding, will you kill him? The monk Tribulation's eyes narrowed. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Yi Xian smiled. Actually, I just want to see if it is a misunderstanding. But now it seems that it is not a misunderstanding. My mother in my previous life really wanted to kill me. The monk Tribulation looked at Yi Xian. You were once the most monstrous prince of my clan. I don't want to kill you. You can choose to commit suicide. I will give you a dignified death. Yi Xian said, I have one last question. The monk Tribulation. Yi Xian asked again. What about my father in my previous life? His wife wanted to kill his son. Did he not care? The monk Tribulation looked at Yi Xian, did not speak. Yi Xian was a little puzzled and was about to speak, but at this time Mu Xing suddenly said, Prince, your father died that year. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Died? Mu Xing nodded. That woman said it herself. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, How did he die? Mu Xing shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian suddenly said, Could it be that woman killed him? Hearing this, Mu Xing's eyelids twitched. This is not impossible. On the side, Yi Xian's face was also a little ugly. If she really killed him, then isn't she too fierce? After killing her husband, she killed her son. Fuck. At this time, the monk Tribulation suddenly said, Prince, I will ask you one last time, will you kill yourself or will I kill you? In fact, he hoped that Yi Xian would kill himself. Why? Because this guy is really the patriarch's son. What if one day the patriarch loses his mind and feels a little guilty towards this son? What should I do at that time? This is not impossible. Women are fickle. Therefore he wanted Yi Xian to kill himself so that he can avoid some karma. Yi Xian looked at the monk Tribulation. I have one last question. The monk Tribulation's face immediately became cold. Don't mess with my mentality. Yi Xian said seriously. I want to ask, before you came, what did that woman say to you? The monk Tribulation stared at Yi Xian. Is this very important? Yi Xian nodded. Very important. The monk Tribulation said, the patriarch wants you to disappear from this world, completely disappear, not only you but also everything related to you. She really wants to kill you, not to train you, do you understand? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, after killing me? The monk Tribulation frowned slightly. What do you mean? Yi Xian said seriously, I think she has another meaning and you have misunderstood her. The monk Tribulation stared at Yi Xian. What do you mean? Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. You, too naive. Let me tell you, she gave birth to me after 10 months of pregnancy. Think about it, which mother in this world really wants her son to die? If she really wants to kill me, why didn't she come herself but let you come? You have to think about this carefully. Think about it carefully. Hearing this, the monk Tribulation's face became somewhat ugly. Yi Xian continued. Indeed, we had a falling out because of some things, but now that so many years have passed, her anger should have almost dissipated. She asked you to kill me, not to actually kill me. She must have wanted to see my attitude now. Let me tell you, my attitude is that I know I was wrong. Go back and tell her that I know I was wrong. I won't make her angry anymore. I know I was wrong. Mu Sheng and Avicii stared at Yi Xian in bewilderment. In the sky, Xingjia's expression became more and more unsightly. Yi Xian looked at Xingjia and said in a serious tone, Xingjia, taking revenge for your son is no joke, you have to think it through. Monk Tribulation. Chapter 1697. Revenge for killing him. At this moment Xingjia's heart was pounding. Who the fuck can resist this? Just as he thought, even if the patriarch really wants to kill Yi Xian, what if she suddenly feels guilty towards Yi Xian? At that time the best way to eliminate the guilt in her heart is to kill him. Damn it. That's not impossible. Yi Xian looked at Xingjia. I think you can go back and ask about it. It's really not easy to cultivate to this point, and if you take a wrong step then you'll be doomed eternally. There's nothing wrong with being steady. In any case, I can't run away from here. What do you think? Xingjia looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian continued, an outsider like you shouldn't interfere in the matters between mother and son. Xingjia was speechless. Yi Xian didn't speak again. The surroundings fell into silence. After a long time Xingjia glanced at Yi Xian, and then his figure gradually became illusory. In next to no time he vanished completely. He's gone. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. Mu Sheng spoke solemnly, Young prince, are you really going to apologize to that woman? Yi Xian shook his head and sighed, Stupid Mu Sheng, how could you believe such nonsense? That woman is so ruthless and her heart is so vicious that it's rare in the world. What's the point of apologizing? Mu Sheng blinked. You tricked him away? Dao Yi said, do you have a backup plan? Yi Xian looked up into the sky. Let's go to the eternal world. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they heard this. Mu Sheng was astounded. The eternal world? Yi Xian nodded. Mu Sheng spoke solemnly, Young prince, you just tricked Xingjia away and now you want to go to the eternal world. What are you thinking? Dao Yi was slightly puzzled. What do you want to do? Yi Xian looked at the horizon and chuckled. That was just a stopgap measure because they will definitely come again. Not only would she come, but that woman might come in person. In that case, why don't we go to the immortal world ourselves? Dao Yi said solemnly, You're trying to find a way to survive. Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Saint Mu spoke in a low voice. You'll definitely die if you go to the eternal world. Yi Xian said with a smile. Sage Mu, what do you think will happen to the Yi clan and that woman if I suddenly appear in the eternal world? And what about the major forces of the immortal world? Mu Sheng looked at Yi Xian. That woman will definitely kill you. Dao Yi suddenly said, Not necessarily. Mu Sheng looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi whispered, If Master appears in the immortal world and that woman kills him now, how will Yi clan look at her? What do the major forces of the immortal world think of this? Whether it's killing a mother or a son, it's not honorable. Especially now, Master can no longer threaten her position. If she still kills him, not to mention other forces, even some people in Yi clan won't be able to bear it. Of course. Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. Master's gambling. Gambling with his life. Yi Xian said with a smile. There's no other choice, let's gamble. Dao Yi said with a smile. Don't you still have the sword master token? Yi Xian said with a smile. I haven't given up yet, have I? I want to work hard first. Dao Yi didn't speak. She knows that Yi Xian doesn't want to use the sword master token. Once the sword master token is used, regardless of whether Yi Xian admits it or not, he will eventually develop a dependence in his heart. In the future, if he has an enemy, he can just use the token. Once he has this kind of mentality, wanting to surpass the green-robed man and the plain-skirt woman can be said to be a fantasy. The green-robed man left the sword master token. The meaning behind it isn't that simple. Yi Xian suddenly said, Let's go. Saying that, he looked at Dao Yi and said, Dao Yi, you stay here and guard against the alien race. Dao Yi shook her head. I'll go with you. Yi Xian was about to speak, but Dao Yi said, I'll go with you even if I die. She knew that Yi Xian telling her to stay here to guard against the alien race was fake. His real purpose was to not let her go with him and take risks. Because this time, Yi Xian doesn't have the confidence that he can win the gamble. In fact, Yi Xian has another purpose, which is to go to Eternal Life World. If he dies in Eternal Life World, at least this universe will be preserved. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi and sighed in his heart. He knows that his thoughts and purpose can't be hidden from this woman. Dao Yi walked to Yi Xian's side. Leave this place to Disaster and the others. I'll go with you. Yi Xian didn't say anything. Dao Yi smiled and said, if you don't agree, I'll secretly follow you. In any case, my legs are on my body. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Then let's go together. Saying that, she looked at Disaster. You guys stay here and be careful against the alien race. Disaster said in a deep voice, I also want to go with you. Yi Xian shook his head. No. Disaster looked at Yi Xian. Why can Dao Yi but I can't? Yi Xian was speechless. Here it comes. At this moment he suddenly felt that it wasn't easy for God Yi back then. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. If we all go to Eternal Life World, what about this place? Disaster was expressionless. Doesn't matter. Yi Xian. At this time the Time Law also said, I want to go too. Yi Xian instantly felt a headache. Dao Yi looked at the Time Law and Disaster Law, smiled. Do you know why Master liked me back then? The two women looked at Dao Yi, their expressions not particularly friendly. Back then God Yi could be said to have favored Dao Yi alone. Dao Yi smiled. Because you two only know how to be jealous and not think about him. Do you really think that I'm going with him to live and die with him? Disaster was expressionless. Isn't that the case? Dao Yi shook his head. Disaster, this time we are going to Eternal Life World not to compete in strength but in wits. Are you two as cunning as I am? The two women were speechless. In terms of scheming, the two women were indeed no match for Dao Yi. Not even Ah Ming. Dao Yi said, although the alien race has retreated, it doesn't mean they won't come again. Someone must guard this place. Therefore you two must stay here and assist Ah Ming guarding this universe together. Yi Xian nodded. It's not like I won't return. Disaster suddenly asked, what if you don't return? Yi Xian smiled. I will definitely return because there are too many people I care about here. Just as Disaster was about to say something, a voice suddenly came from the side. Stop being so wishy-washy. Everyone looked over and saw a woman slowly walking over. The person who came was Ah Ming. Ah Ming glanced at Disaster. The two of you stay here and guard this universe with me. Saying that, she looked at Dao Yi and Yi Xian. Come back alive, is there a problem? Yi Xian smiled. No. Ah Ming nodded. Go. I will take care of your people for you. Yi Xian nodded. Let's go. Saying that, he turned and left. At this moment, Ah Ming suddenly looked at Dao Yi. Bring him back. Dao Yi nodded. Okay. Soon Yi Xian left a storage ring for Ah Ming, and the group disappeared into the horizon. They didn't bid farewell to anyone else. Ah Ming and the others looked at the horizon, deep in thought. In her storage ring, there were tens of thousands of great Dao origin crystals. If used well, it was enough to nurture countless intent realm experts. Most importantly, she, Disaster, and the others could also use these great Dao origin crystals to break through to the eternal realm or even beyond. At this moment, Disaster suddenly said, they will return, right? Ah Ming was expressionless. They will definitely return. Disaster looked at Ah Ming. Why are you so sure? Ah Ming glanced at Disaster. The woman in the plain dress is invincible. Saying that, she turned and left. Disaster. Somewhere in the starry sky, the patriarch of the alien dimension race looked at the distant starry sky, silent. In front of Li Shixin stood a phantom. After a long time, Li Shixin said softly, that direction he should be going to the eternal world. The phantom said solemnly, is he going to die? Li Shixin shook his head. He wants to fight to the death. The phantom was puzzled. What do you mean? Li Shixin looked at the horizon, not explaining. The phantom didn't dare to ask. The surroundings became silent. After a long time, Li Shixin said, let's go. After saying that, he turned and left. The phantom said solemnly, Patriarch, he has already left. If we make a move, that universe will be in our hands. Li Shixin stopped and turned to look at the phantom. As long as he doesn't die, everything is possible. Understand? The phantom, Li Shixin said softly, this Yi Xian is fancier and more mysterious than God Yi. If he doesn't die, the alien dimension race will not enter this universe. After saying that, he turned and disappeared into the starry sky. In the battlefield, the phantom sighed softly. His patriarch was good at everything, but he was too cautious. Being cautious was not a bad thing, but being overly cautious was not a good thing either. However, he didn't dare to say that. After all, he was just a pawn. The phantom shook his head and disappeared into the distance. In the starry sky, Zhou Xian and the others were crazily shuttling through the starry sky. Zhou Xian looked at the distant starry sky. Mu Xing, have you heard of the Sword Alliance when you were in the Eternal World? Mu Xing shook his head. Never heard of it. Zhou Xian looked at Mu Xing. Never heard of it? Mu Xing nodded. Never heard of it. It should be a force outside of the Eternal World. Zhou Xian said softly. Is Dad's force so low-key? Mu Xing said solemnly. Prince, when you reach the Eternal World, you will find that the forces outside are really very weak. Zhou Xian smiled. Maybe. Dao Yi suddenly said, Mu Xing, tell me about the major forces in the Eternal World and the situation of the Yi clan. In short, we need to understand the Yi clan and the entire Eternal World in detail. Mu Xing nodded and said, in the Eternal World there are very few forces, only 6. Eternal World. In the main hall, Xianxia knelt on one knee on the ground. Not far from him was Yi Linggan. After a long time, Yi Lingtian looked at Xianxia. He told you that, so you came back? Xianxia immediately knelt on the ground. Yi Lingtian shook his head. You, a person who has lived for hundreds of thousands of years, was fooled by someone who has lived for more than 20 years. Are you a pig? Boom. Suddenly, Xianxia's body burst apart. Xianxia. Chapter 1698. Inside the hall, after Xianxia's body exploded, his soul once again knelt down. Xianxia lay on the ground, not daring to speak. Yi Lingtian slowly walked in front of Xianxia. She looked down at Xianxia. You are afraid that I will settle accounts with you later. Xianxia said with a trembling voice. This subordinate knows his mistake. Yi Lingtian smiled. You know your mistake? With that, she walked to the entrance of the hall. It is normal for you to be worried. In fact, I have often thought of him over the years, and sometimes I even feel a little guilty. Hearing this, Xianxia was speechless and wanted to curse. At the entrance of the hall, Yi Linggan suddenly smiled. If he was not so outstanding, maybe now we can still continue to be filial. Xianxia lay on the ground, not daring to speak. I don't want to hear these words. Isn't this killing me? At this time, Yi Linggan suddenly said, Go. Xianxia suddenly felt relieved, immediately bowed deeply and then quietly left. At this time, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded behind Yi Linggan. Miss, this old slave will go. Yi Lingtian said with a smile. Ugly slave, what do you think my good son will do next? Behind Yi Linggan, the hoarse voice sounded again. I don't know. Yi Lingtian looked into the distance and said with a smile. I am really curious. Behind him, the ugly slave said, This old slave will go. At this time, a shadow suddenly appeared in front of Yi Linggan. Patriarchy. God Yi has come to the entrance of Eternal Life World. Hearing this, Yi Linggan was stunned, then laughed. Ha! He actually came to Eternal Life World. Interesting, ha! God Yi is here. Not only Yi clan at this moment, the entire Eternal Life World knows. Who's God Yi? The most monstrous genius in the entire Eternal Life World. And now he is back. In front of the Eternal Life Gate. Looking at the densely packed corpses around him, Zhou Xian remained silent. These people are experts who want to enter Eternal Life World. And here, the lowest level is a concept expert. There are also many Eternal Realm experts. What does this mean? It means that the outside world is very different from Eternal Life World. At this moment, many obscure auras suddenly appeared in the surrounding space. Beside Yi Xian, Mu Xing's expression changed drastically. These are the Yi clan's death guards, the bodyguards of that woman. Yi Xian smiled and said, Don't panic. Mu Xing glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. In the surroundings, the Yi clan's hidden experts did not make a move. At this moment, the gate of eternal life suddenly opened. Yi Xian suddenly said, Let's go. As he spoke, he led everyone towards the door of eternal life. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly enveloped Yi Xian and the others. At the same time, a black-robed old man stood in front of Yi Xian and the others. The black-robed old man didn't waste any time and directly turned into an afterimage as he charged at Yi Xian. Obviously he wanted to kill Yi Xian and prevent him from entering the immortal world. Right at this moment Yi Xian suddenly pointed angrily at the black-robed old man. Impudent! Boom! His voice was like thunder that shook the starry sky. The black-robed old man immediately stopped and looked at Yi Xian with a trace of fear in his eyes. God Yi! In the past his prestige in the Yi clan had even surpassed Yi Lingtian's. Even though so many years had passed, the people of the Yi clan still feared him. Yi Xian looked at the black-robed old man with a cold smile. How can an outsider like you interfere in a matter between mother and son? Get lost. A matter between mother and son. The corners of the black-robed old man's mouth twitched. This was indeed a matter between mother and son. What should he do? The black-robed old man was in a difficult position. Because up until now, the patriarch had not given him any instructions. Should he kill him or not? In his opinion, the patriarch definitely didn't want Yi Xian to return. However, he had some misgivings. What if he guessed wrong? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked towards the gate of eternal life. The black-robed old man glanced at Yi Xian and was still hesitant. Should he do it or not? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly sped up and turned into a sword light that entered the eternal world. The black-robed old man was speechless. Dao Yi and the others hurriedly followed. After entering the eternal world, Yi Xian looked around. He had to admit that the spiritual qi here was at least 100 times denser than the outside world. 100 times. What did that mean? The difference between cultivating here and cultivating outside was like heaven and earth. When Dao Yi saw the spiritual qi in this place, her expression became extremely solemn. The Yi clan was many times more terrifying than she had imagined. How terrifying were the forces in such a place? With this spiritual qi, even a good-for-nothing could cultivate to become a strong cultivator. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, her eyes were filled with worry. The Yi clan was so powerful. How was her young master going to deal with it? Beside Yi Xian, Saint Mu and Dao Avicii's expressions were incomparably complicated. They had returned to this place again. However, things had remained the same, but the people had changed. Everything was different now. As if he had thought of something, Saint Mu quickly said, "Prince, let's go to the Shao clan." Yi Xian looked at Saint Mu. The Shao clan? Saint Mu nodded. The Shao clan is now the #1 clan in the eternal world. Only they are not afraid of the Yi clan. We can go to the Shao clan and seek their protection. Yi Xian laughed. Silly Saint Mu, do you feel the hidden auras around us? Mu Xing scanned his surroundings. There were countless powerful auras lurking in the dark. Yi Xian laughed. If we go to the Shao clan now, these people will attack immediately. The reason why they haven't attacked us is because they don't know what our intentions are. But if we go and join the enemy, do you think they will let us go? Saint Mu's face turned ugly. Then what should we do now? Yi Xian smiled. Let's go to the Yi clan. Saint Mu was shocked. Go to the Yi clan? Yi Xian nodded. They won't attack us only if we go to the Yi clan. Saint Mu said. But once we go to the Yi clan, we won't be able to get out. Yi Xian smiled. Can we go now? Saint Mu looked around and shook his head. Yi Xian smiled. Isn't that it? Let's go. Take me to the Yi clan. I want to see the place where God Yi grew up. Saint Mu looked at Yi Xian. All right. She walked away after saying that. Yi Xian and Dao Yi followed. When they saw Yi Xian and the others walking in the direction of the Yi clan, everyone was stunned. Are they going to the Yi clan? It wasn't just the experts from the other clans. Even the experts from the Yi clan were stunned. What is this prince trying to do? Somewhere in the dark, a young man suddenly laughed. Interesting. The young man was followed by a woman in white. Both of them had a small Shao character painted on their left chests. It was obvious that they were from the Shao clan. The woman in white glanced at Yi Xian and the others in the distance. Is this the god Yi who stunned the entire Perseus back then? I don't think so. The young man shook his head. You can't say that. Back then this person was the well-deserved #1 in the Perseus realm. Not only the younger generation, but even the older generation couldn't suppress him. So far, no one has been able to break the record he set in overlooking Abyss Mountain. Overlooking Abyss. The woman in white's expression became solemn. The young man continued. When the ancestors mentioned God Yi, they all gasped in admiration. Even the family said that if the Yi clan hadn't changed back then, the Shao clan wouldn't have become the #1 clan in Perseus. Not only that, but the major clans in the entire Perseus realm will also be suppressed by God Yi. The woman in white said solemnly, "It's not a good thing to be too outstanding." The young man smiled, "That's true. However, this matter with the Yi clan is rare. After all, they don't want their son to surpass their mother or—" At this point he seemed to be afraid of something and didn't continue. Although the Xiao clan was the #1 clan in Perseus realm, he didn't have the right to talk about the Yi clan's clan leader, especially when this clan leader was extremely extraordinary. The #1 ruthless person. This Yi Lingtian of the Yi clan was the #1 ruthless person in Perseus realm. He even dared to kill his own son. How was that not ruthless? In the distance, Zhou Xian and the others had already disappeared. The woman in white suddenly said, "Second brother, what do you think his purpose for coming to the Yi clan this time?" The young man smiled, "I can't see through him." The woman in white said softly, "What's the attitude of the clan leader and the others? Do they want to intervene?" The young man smiled, "Why should we intervene? Let's just watch the show." As he spoke, he turned his head and glanced to the right. Not far to the right there was also a man standing there. On the man's left chest there was a small, Gu character. Ancient clan. One of the 4 great clans of Perseus realm. The young man cupped his fists and smiled, "So it's brother Gu Lai. You're here too." In the distance, the man called Gu Lai glanced at the young man. "Xiao Ju, what's the attitude of your Xiao clan?" Xiao Ju laughed, "This is the matter of the Yi clan. What does it have to do with our Xiao clan?" Gu Lai said indifferently, "What if God Yi admits his mistake and the Yi clan accepts him again?" Xiao Ju blinked, "Brother Gu Lai, are you joking?" Gu Lai chuckled, "It's not impossible, isn't it?" Xiao Ju laughed, "Brother Gu Lai, back then tens of thousands of people died tragically in the Yi clan. Do you think this blood debt can be easily erased?" Gu Lai looked into the distance and smiled, "I said what if?" Xiao Ju narrowed his eyes and his smile gradually froze. Gu Lai shrugged. "Your Xiao clan should know best how terrifying God Yi was back then. If he returns to the Yi clan, do you think our Perseus realm will be reshuffled?" After saying that, he turned and left. In the same place, Xiao Ju's expression was calm. No one knew what he was thinking. Yi clan. Under the lead of Mu Xing, Yi Xian and the others arrived at Yi world in a short while. This was a small world that the Yi clan had opened up in the immortal world and enjoyed the spiritual energy of this small world alone. When entering Yi world, Yi Xian saw a huge ancient city. The ancient city floated in the air and covered an area of 1,000 miles. It was extremely imposing. Yi City. When they arrived in front of the city gate of Yi City, there were 19 people hanging above the city gate. The 19 people's deaths were extremely tragic. Their bodies were covered with all kinds of small blood-red nails. In addition, there was a cloud-colored flame under their feet. When seeing the 19 people, Mu Xing, who was standing beside Yi Xian, immediately looked ferocious. "Crown Prince, they are the 19 divine generals who followed you back then. How vicious." At this moment, the beast god's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "Kid, they are not dead, but their souls are imprisoned in their bodies. Moreover, they are being tortured by a terrifying forbidden technique. This kind of pain. Even I am afraid that I can't bear it." Suddenly, the leading man above the city gate seemed to feel something. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yi Xian below. When he saw Yi Xian, the man was slightly stunned. In the next moment, tears flowed from his eyes. "Crown Prince." The other 18 people also opened their eyes. The moment they saw Yi Xian, the tears in their eyes instantly burst like a dam. For countless years, they tortured their souls day and night, but none of them made a sound. None of them begged for mercy. At this moment, the 19 people were crying like a child. P.S. Happy birthday to Miss Deng Shuchuan. Although it is a few days late. Chapter 1699. It was silent in front of the city gate. Yi Xian looked at the people hanging on the city wall. His expression was calm, but his right hand had unknowingly tightened. A moment later, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He held Dao Yi's hand with his right hand and whispered, "Dao Yi, I wasn't worthy of your love in the past." Dao Yi was silent. She had fused with Yi Xian's soul before, so she could clearly feel Yi Xian's emotions at that moment. She knew that Yi Xian was different from God Yi. Their personalities were very different. If it was Yi Xian back then, what would Yi Xian do? Would he escape? No. He would never escape. He would do everything he could to fight the Yi clan to the death. Even if he died, he would never abandon his brothers. However, God Yi was gone. Thinking to this point, Dao Yi sighed in his heart. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked to the city gate and looked up at the 19 people. Do you regret it? The man in the lead laughed maniacally. Never. Yi Xian nodded slightly, then walked into the city. At that moment, the man in the lead suddenly said, Prince. Yi Xian stopped and looked at the man. The man stared at Yi Xian. Prince, if you were to go back in time, what would you do? Yi Xian asked in return, do you have any resentment? The man looked at Yi Xian, tears flowing from his eyes. I have no regrets, but I do have resentment. Under my command, 3,600 brothers fought to the death. They died a terrible death. Not only did they die, but several of their clans were also killed. At that point, he suddenly roared, Prince, if you were to go back in time, would you still not resist? Back then, when God Yi learned that his mother wanted to kill him, he did not really resist. That was the man's resentment. Yi Xian looked at the man. If I were to go back in time, I would fight to the death with all of you. Having said that, he turned and walked into the city. Behind him, the man laughed crazily. The other 18 people also laughed loudly. But after laughing and laughing, she started to cry. At this moment, Yi Xian's voice came from afar. Live well. Live well. On top of the city gate, the man in the lead slowly closed his eyes. Crown Prince. We've lost the upper hand. We no longer have a chance. After entering the city, it was abnormally quiet. There was not a single person on the wide streets. Dao Yi followed beside Yi Xian, holding onto Yi Xian's hand tightly. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far from Yi Xian. The middle-aged man was wearing a long black robe. His back was ramrod straight and he held a piece of warm jade in his hand. Beside Yi Xian, Mu Sheng and the other man quickly bowed respectfully. Greetings, Guardian Yi Xian. This person was the guardian of the Yi clan. Yi Tian looked at Yi Xian. Walk with me. Yi Xian nodded. All right. Yi Xian and Yi Tian walked into the distance, while Dao Yi and the other two followed behind slowly. After walking for a long time, Yi Tian suddenly asked, Why did you come to the Yi clan? Yi Xian smiled. I had nowhere else to go. Yi Tian glanced at Yi Xian. There's a way out here? Yi Xian shrugged. I wanted to try. Yi Tian shook his head. You no longer have a chance. Very straightforward. Yi Xian said with a smile. Can you beat her? Yi Tian shook his head. Not now. Because she has the authority of the clan leader and that sacred relic. Yi Xian nodded slightly. As if thinking of something, he asked again, Why didn't she kill you? Yi Tian glanced at Yi Xian. Can't think of it? Yi Xian smiled. You're already on her side. Yi Tian nodded. If not, the Yi clan will really split. He paused for a moment before continuing. Do you blame me? Yi Xian shook his head. How can I blame you? Yi Tian shook his head. If I had been more vigilant back then, things wouldn't have come to this. Yi Xian smiled. Back then, I didn't even think of resisting, right? Yi Tian nodded. She's your closest relative. Before that, your relationship was very good. She looked at Yi Xian. Don't blame him for being weak back then. That woman could kill her son, but that doesn't mean he could kill his mother. At that time, he was a little disheartened. Yi Xian did not speak. Indeed, anyone who encountered such a situation would feel pain in the ass. Yi Tian said softly, The Yi clan can't afford any more infighting. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian smiled. I don't understand. Yi Tian looked at Yi Xian. Since you dared to come back, you must have something to rely on. And now you have many unknown karma, not just from the Yi clan. After you reincarnated, this life of yours is not simple. You want to use the karma of this life to fight against your previous life. Hearing this, Yi Xian's heart trembled. How terrifying. As the guardian of the Yi clan, Yi Tian is indeed not simple. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and smiled. Senior, do you think there is any force that can fight against the Yi clan? Yi Tian said softly. Under normal circumstances, there are no forces outside the eternal world. However, nothing is absolute. There is always someone stronger than you. If there is a force stronger than the eternal world outside, I would not be surprised. Yi Xian looked at Yi Tian. a trace of surprise flashing in his eyes. The Yi clan is not full of arrogance. Yi Tian looked around. In that war, the Yi clan lost too many elites, so much so that we have not fully recovered. If it happens again, the Yi clan will be gone. Yi Xian said with a smile. She wants me dead. Yi Tian did not speak. Yi Xian said again. This time I will not sit still and wait for death. Yi Tian's eyes flashed with a trace of worry. If you dare to say such words, it proves that the force behind you is stronger than I thought. Saying this, he glanced at Yi Xian. This time you came back for revenge. Yi Xian smiled. No. I came back this time, I just want to live. Yi Tian looked at Yi Xian. If she wants to kill you, no one in the entire eternal world can stop her. Not even me. Unless the ancestor's soul reappears, but only she can summon the ancestor's soul. Moreover, even if the ancestor's soul appears, it may not necessarily stand on your side. Do you understand? Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Right now he had already lost his momentum. He used to be the most monstrous person in the Yi clan. If the ancestor's soul appears, he will not let that woman act recklessly. The other elders of the Yi clan will also stop her. But now, those who once supported him were basically gone. Even this Yi Tian will not support him now. To put it simply, he has no value now. Yi Tian suddenly stopped. Not far from the two of them there stood a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man wore armor and held a sheathed long sword in his hand. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian has already guessed this person's identity. This person is definitely Commander Yi Qian, one of the 3 people who helped him before. At this time Yi Qian suddenly turned and left. Yi Tian said softly. I can only send you here. Yi Xian nodded. Thank you. Yi Tian pointed at the hall in the distance. He is inside. Once you enter, it is uncertain whether you will live or die. I cannot help you. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. Yi Tian lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder. Take care. With that he turned and left. At this time, Dao Yi and the other 2 came to Yi Xian's side. Dao Yi looked at the hall in the distance. I will go with you. Yi Xian smiled. I will go alone. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said softly. Let me face it alone. Dao Yi slightly lowered his head, not saying a word. Yi Xian took out a token and placed it in Dao Yi's hand. He smiled. If I die inside, tell Qing'er and Dad that except for those 2, all the Yi clan members must die. Don't leave a single one alive. With that he turned and walked towards the hall. Dao Yi looked at the sword master's token in her hand and remained silent. She knew that Yi Xian had given her a life-saving token. Will Yi Xian die? Dao Yi looked into the distance. Her eyes flashed with a trace of complexity. She knew that even Yi Xian doesn't have 100% confidence. He is really risking his life. Dao Yi looked at the sword master's token in her hand. At this moment she has a doubt in her heart. If I use the sword master's token, will experts come to Eternal World? Can the green-robed man's Sword Dao alliance resist the terrifying Yi clan? The answer is unknown. Because at present the Leaf clan was very strong. In the distance Yi Xian arrived in front of the hall. A black-robed old man stood in front of the hall. The hunchbacked old man stared at Yi Xian like a sword. He didn't hide his killing intent. Yi Xian looked at the hunchbacked old man and said with a smile. Want to kill me? The hunchbacked old man said in a hoarse voice. You think I don't dare? Yi Xian walked towards the hunchbacked old man and said with a smile. Come. The hunchbacked old man squinted his eyes and slowly clenched his right hand. Yi Xian said with a smile. Master didn't say anything. As a dog, how would you dare to make a move? Am I right? The hunchbacked old man grinned. Prince is right. This old servant is a dog of the patriarch. But what about Prince? I'm afraid Prince is worse than a dog now. Yi Xian blinked. Are you saying that your master's son is worse than a dog? The smile on the hunchbacked old man's face froze. Yi Xian laughed. A dog is a dog. You have to look at your master's face for everything you do. What surprised me is that as a dog you actually have a sense of superiority. You are even more shameless than Xiao Ta. Xiao Ta was suddenly dissatisfied. Young master, when was I shameless? Yi Xian smiled. I forgot that you are in my body. Next time I will say bad things about you when you are not here. Xiao Ta, Yi Xian didn't care about the hunchbacked old man anymore. He walked towards the hall in the distance. Behind him, the hunchbacked old man stared at Yi Xian. His face was gloomy and scary. After Yi Xian entered the hall, the entire hall was empty and quiet. Yi Xian looked into the distance. A woman was sitting there. The woman was looking at the memorial in her hand. She seemed very busy. Yi Xian smiled. He walked in front of the woman. At this time the woman suddenly said, "In order to prevent you from being lonely, I brought your friends and relatives to a mortal world." Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian and the corners of her mouth raised slightly. "Is mother treating you well?" Chapter 1700. They were all brought to the eternal world. Yi Xian looked at Yi Lingtian before him. A moment later he smiled. "This place is rich in spiritual energy. It's a good thing that they came here." "A good thing." In the distance, Yi Lingtian's lips curled up slightly. "It's indeed a good thing." Yi Xian looked around. "Can I ask a few questions?" Yi Lingtian's Tendo replied, "Sure." She paused for a moment before continuing, "Don't ask those childish questions." Yi Xian asked, "Can I see the eternal qi?" Yi Lingtian opened her palm, and a wisp of spiritual energy suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian. The spiritual energy was pure white without a trace of impurities. It was extremely pure. After Yi Xian took a closer look at the eternal qi, he realized that it was different from Little White's primordial violet energy. It had different effects. Little White's violet energy was not inferior to the eternal qi, but her violet energy did not have the ability to prolong one's life. Moreover, the eternal qi did not have the recovery ability of the violet energy. At this moment, Yi Lingtian suddenly closed the memorial in her hand. She stood up and walked to Yi Xian before handing the memorial to Yi Xian. "Take a look." Yi Xian took the memorial and opened it. It was filled with information about him. Everything that happened in Qingqing up until now, every little thing was clearly recorded in the records. Yi Lingtian smiled. "Turn to the last page." Yi Xian flipped to the last page. There were only 2 words on the last page. Tianming Yang Yi. His father and Qing. Yi Lingtian smiled. "These 2 people are the reason why you dare to come here. Am I right?" Yi Xian retorted. "That's why you let me come here, right?" Yi Lingtian smiled. "What do you think?" Yi Xian walked to the side and sat down. He looked at Yi Lingtian. "I think there's no point in playing tricks. So I won't keep a low profile. That's right, I have a backer." Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Are you threatening me?" Yi Xian laughed and said, "Come kill me." The smile on Yi Ling's lips gradually disappeared. Yi Xian walked in front of Yi Lingtian and looked him in the eye. "I'm begging for death. Die." As soon as these words were spoken, the entire hall suddenly became silent. In the dark, the hunchbacked old man glanced at Yi Xian. His eyes were still filled with killing intent, but at this moment he was even more shocked. No one had ever dared to be so arrogant in front of the patriarch. Never. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Kill me and you'll be able to get rid of any future troubles. So what are you waiting for?" Yi Lingtian suddenly stretched out her finger and placed it between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Her lips curled into a smile. "Do you think I don't dare?" Yi Xian blinked. "Come on. I definitely won't fight back." Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian and pointed her finger between Yi Xian's eyebrows. As long as this finger landed, Yi Xian would definitely die. The current Yi Xian would definitely not be able to fight against her. The entire hall fell silent once again. After a moment, Yi Lingtian suddenly retracted her hand and smiled. "Silly child, mother can't be more than happy to see you. Why would she kill you?" As she spoke, she looked at the hunchbacked old man not far away. "Ugly slave, take the crown prince back to rest." Ugly slave glanced at Yi Xian. "Crown prince, please." Yi Xian smiled. "Then I'll go back to rest first. If there's anything that patriarchy can't figure out, you can ask me at any time." With that he turned and left. Yi Lingtian watched as Yi Xian left with a calm expression. No one knew what she was thinking. After a while, Ugly Slave returned to the hall. Ugly Slave bowed slightly. "Patriarch, this kid is just a fox pretending to be a tiger." "You?" Yi Lingtian glanced at Ugly Slave. "Do you really think he's a fox pretending to be a tiger?" Ugly Slave looked at Yi Lingtian. Could it be that the person behind him is stronger than our Yi clan? Yi Lingtian looked up at the sky and smiled. Ugly Slave, in this vast universe, do you think our Yi clan is invincible? Invincible? Ugly Slave hesitated and did not speak. Although the Yi clan was strong, they were certainly not invincible. At least in this immortal world. Yi Lingtian chuckled. He's not a fox pretending to be a tiger. The two people behind him are indeed not simple. Of course, this is not the reason why I didn't kill him. Keeping him alive has too many uses. Ugly Slave was a little puzzled. What uses? Yi Lingtian smiled. After killing him back then, our Yi clan's younger generation had no successor. As a result, our Yi clan's younger generation was crushed by the other clans. This also caused us to have no right to speak in the Immortal Mountain Range. Immortal Mountain Range. Ugly Slave was silent. It had to be said that after God Yi, the entire Yi clan had never produced a decent genius. There was no successor. Ugly Slave said in a deep voice, "Clan leader wants to use him to fight against other clans and fight for our Yi clan's right to speak in the Immortal Mountain Range?" Yi Lingtian smiled. Now the Shao clan and the others must be waiting to see our Yi clan make a fool of themselves. Some clans are even thinking of secretly supporting him in an attempt to disgust our Yi clan. Say, if he suddenly becomes a sword of our Yi clan, a sword that pierces them, what kind of expression do you think they will have? Ugly Slave said in a deep voice, "Clan leader, he's not easy to control. Moreover, if he grows up..." At this point he did not continue. Back then, God Yi grew too fast, so fast that he was out of the control of the clan leader, which led to the subsequent events. Yi Lingtian slowly closed his eyes. The current him can't make any waves. Ugly Slave nodded slightly and said no more. The current Yi clan, even Yi Tian and Yi Qian, would not stand on Yi Xian's side. In the past, God Yi could bring the Yi clan to a higher level and even completely change the Yi family. That was why he had so many supporters. No. From the Yi clan's point of view, the current Yi Xian was very ordinary. Moreover, those who were loyal to Yi Xian back then had basically been eradicated. It was impossible for the current Yi Xian to overthrow the Yi clan. At that moment, Yi Lingtian suddenly said, "You may leave." Ugly Slave bowed slightly and quietly left. At that moment, Yi Lingtian said again, "Go and investigate the two people behind him." In the dark, a voice quietly sounded. "Yes." Yi Lingtian chuckled. "I didn't kill you not because I'm afraid of the people behind you, but because I want to play with you." After saying that, she turned and walked toward the inner hall. After Yi Xian left the hall, he walked in front of Dao Yi and said with a smile, "It's fine now." Dao Yi placed the Sword Master token in Yi Xian's hand. "That's good." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Let's go." After saying that, he led Dao Yi and the other two to the city gate. He looked at the 19 people who were hanging, and the next moment he drew his sword. At that moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of him. The old man looked coldly at Yi Xian. Without the family head's order, no one is allowed to release them. Yi Xian did not waste any time. He dashed forward and drew out his sword to strike. Sword drawing technique. At that moment he directly used the Beast God incantation and the power of bloodline. Seeing that Yi Xian made his move, a trace of hostility flashed in the old man's eyes, and he directly punched. With that punch, a river of time appeared in front of him. Rumble. As Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the river of time shook violently, and the old man behind it instantly retreated several hundred feet. The moment the old man stopped, Yi Xian had already saved the 18 people. The old man's expression turned fierce, and he was about to attack again when suddenly, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. The old man instantly stopped. In the distance, Yi Xian looked at the man who led the group. "What's your name?" The man replied, "Zhou Xian." Yi Xian opened his palm and countless strands of violet energy surged out from it. After he absorbed the violet energy, Zhou Yan's internal injuries started to recover swiftly. Zhou Yan shook his head. "One of our souls is in that woman's hands." Yi Xian frowned when he heard this. Meanwhile, Yi Lingtian suddenly appeared before the city gate. She gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. "I didn't expect you to be so impatient. Since it's like that, then let's hurry up. It's not impossible to save them, but there's a condition." Yi Xian gazed at Yi Lingtian. "What condition?" Yi Lingtian smiled. There are 6 eternal crystal ores in the Eternal Mountain Range, and my Yi clan doesn't have a single one. I want you to fight for one for my Yi clan. Moreover, I don't want another clans. I want the Hera clans. The Hera clan, Yi Xian said with a smile. You have such a good plan. That's great. Yi Lingtian smiled. You can refuse. With that she waved her jade-like hand lightly. Zhou Xian and the others were hung up again. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I'm not in a hurry. I can wait. Come and find me after you've thought it through. With that she turned and left. At that moment Yi Xian suddenly said, There's no need to think about it. I'll go now. Yi Lingtian stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian. I forgot to mention one thing. The Yi clan won't provide you with any help. You have to fight for it yourself. Yi Xian smiled. Sure. However, I also have a condition. That is to let them down first and give them some face. This isn't too much to ask, right? Yi Lingtian smiled. What if I say it's too much? Yi Xian shook his head. If you think it's too much for such a small matter, then I think there's no need for us to talk. Yi Lingtian smiled. Actually, whether it's too much or not depends on your strength. Right now, your strength makes me think it's too much because I think you're not qualified to negotiate with me. If you're strong enough, I think this is a very, very small matter. Of course. With that she paused, then continued. For you, I can make an exception. After all, you're my son. With that she waved her jade-like hand lightly. Zhou Xian and the others were immediately released. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian. I'll wait for your good news. Yi Xian suddenly said, You won't go back on your word, right? Yi Lingtian smiled. To me, not only are the 19 of them no threat, they're also useless. Whether I kill them or not depends on my mood. So don't worry. If you can get the eternal crystal mine in the Eternal Mountain Range, I'll let them go. Yi Xian stared at Yi Lingtian. What if you break your promise? Yi Lingtian blinked. Then I'll end my line and the next generation will die. Yi Xian's expression froze. At this moment he was on the verge of exploding. P.S. Whenever the monthly tickets are low, I will reflect on myself. Could it be that there were too few updates? Or is it water again? Chapter 1701. Die without descendants. Hearing this, Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. What kind of words are these? Yi Lingtian laughed, turned around and left. Beside Yi Xian, Dao Yi suddenly said softly, This woman has no feelings. No feelings. Yi Xian nodded. He had actually felt it. In the past he had heard Sister Nian say that many people, the longer they live, the more heartless they become. In their hearts, there was only eternal life in the great Tao. Other than that, everything else was fleeting. However, he did not understand why Qing'er was so sentimental. No, Qing'er was only good to him from beginning to end. To others, Qing'er was even scarier than the Yi clan leader. At this moment, Dao Yi suddenly said, Are you really going to the everlasting mountain range to fight for that or crystal? Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. You should know her goal. Yi Xian smiled. I know. Dao Yi said, Do you have a plan? Yi Xian nodded. He walked in front of Zhou Xian and the others. He opened his palm and some great Tao source crystals appeared in front of them. You all take care of your injuries. With that he turned around and left. Zhou Xian suddenly said, She wants to use you. Yi Xian nodded. I know. Zhou Xian shook his head. Crown Prince, we are doomed. Yi Xian smiled. Are we just going to wait for death? With that he led Dao Yi and the others into the distance. Behind him, Zhou Xian sighed softly. In the main hall. Yi Lingtian stood in the middle of the main hall. In front of him was Ugly Slave. Yi Lingtian suddenly smiled. Ugly Slave, what do you think he will do? Ugly Slave shook his head. I don't know. Yi Lingtian smiled. I'm looking forward to it. Ugly Slave wanted to say something but hesitated. Yi Lingtian looked at Ugly Slave. Do you want me to directly kill him to avoid future trouble? The Ugly Slave nodded. This person isn't simple either. If we leave him alive, he will be a disaster in the future. Yi Lingtian shook his head. It's not the right time to kill him now. Ugly Slave didn't understand. Why? Yi Lingtian opened his palm and a black scroll floated in front of Ugly Slave. Ugly Slave opened it and took a look. Gradually, his expression became solemn. Yi Lingtian smiled and said, The two people behind him are not simple. As for how strong they are, our people have yet to figure it out. Ugly Slave hesitated for a moment before he said, that woman in a plain dress killed them with a single strike of her sword. Now that I think about it, it really is quite terrifying. However, Patriarch, don't forget that she killed people outside the immortal world, and the people outside are as weak as chickens. Not to mention the Patriarch, even if this old servant goes out, I can also kill people with only one move. Yi Lingtian said with a smile. So, in your opinion, that woman in a plain dress is only ordinary? The Ugly Slave nodded. This woman's strength is just an exaggeration. This old slave asserts that she is at most at the peak of the eternity realm. Yi Lingtian smiled and didn't say anything. Ugly Slave said again, if the Patriarch doesn't believe me, this old servant is willing to personally meet this person and bring his head to see the Patriarch. Yi Lingtian glanced at Ugly Slave and still didn't say anything. Ugly Slave continued, if you don't bring his head, this old servant is willing to be punished. Yi Lingtian pondered for a moment and said, then go and meet this person. The last place this person appeared was the ruins of God. You should be able to catch up to her if you follow the ruins of God. Remember, if you can't beat her, retreat immediately. Ugly Slave bowed slightly. Patriarch, don't worry. This old servant will definitely bring back his head. After saying that, he turned around and disappeared. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded behind Yi Lingtian. This subordinate also suggests that we kill this person first to avoid future trouble. Yi Lingtian looked out of the hall and said with a smile, it's okay, play with him first. It won't be too late to kill him after we're tired of playing with him. After saying that, she turned around and left. After Yi Xian left Yi World, he went straight to the Hera clan. On the way, Dao Yi said in a deep voice, she wants to kill with a borrowed knife. She wants to disgust you and the Hera clan. She wants the entire eternal world to hate you and get rid of you. Yi Xian nodded. I know. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. How do we break out of this situation? Yi Xian said with a smile, even the two of us can guess her thoughts. It's impossible for the eternal world's forces to not think of it. Dao Yi glanced at Yi Xian. Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me your plan. Yi Xian raised two fingers. Bluff. Bluff. Dao Yi was stunned. At this moment, Mu Xing couldn't help but say, Prince, these big families are not so easy to bluff. Yi Xian chuckled and didn't say anything. Mu Xing sighed in his heart. After a while, everyone arrived at Hella Realm. As soon as they entered the Hella Realm, an old man appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the old man. Is it Miss Herayan who is looking for me? The old man was slightly taken aback. How do you know? Yi Xian smiled. Lead the way. The old man glanced at Yi Xian and said, follow me. After saying that, he turned and left. Yi Xian brought Dao Yi and the others and followed. After a while, the old man brought Yi Xian and the others to the foot of a mountain. The old man looked at Yi Xian. Only you can go up. Yi Xian turned to look at Dao Yi. Wait for me. Dao Yi nodded. Yi Xian rode his sword and went straight to the top of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, he saw a woman. Herayan, the former fiancée of God Yi. Herayan had her back facing Yi Xian and did not say a word. Yi Xian walked to Herayan's side and she said softly, things remain the same but people have changed. Yi Xian nodded. Indeed. Herayan turned to look at Yi Xian. At that moment, Yi Xian also saw Herayan's face. Beautiful. That was Yi Xian's first impression. Herayan's facial features were extremely exquisite and flawless. Coupled with the snow-white dress she was wearing, she looked like an otherworldly fairy. Herayan suddenly said, you're not him. Clearly, she could tell that Yi Xian had yet to awaken. Yi Xian smiled. I just temporarily lost my memory. Temporarily lost his memory. Hearing that, Herayan's right hand trembled slightly. How could she not understand what Yi Xian meant? He was God Yi. He just lost his memory. That did not seem to be wrong. Yi Xian said softly, I need your help. Herayan shook her head. The Hera clan won't hand that gold mine over to you. Not only is it related to profit, but it's also related to their reputation. Moreover, the clan isn't particularly friendly toward you now. Yi Xian smiled. Because of the Yi clan? Herayan shook her head. Because of you. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, are you blaming me for not resisting back then? Herayan nodded. Yi Xian said with a smile, Can I talk to the leader of the Hera clan? Harayan nodded slightly. Yes. Follow me. Having said that, she turned around and saw a middle-aged man standing not far away. That person was the Hera clan leader, Harayan. Harayan looked at Zhou Xian calmly. Compared to back then, you're much weaker now. Zhou Xian smiled. Senior, I'll cut to the chase. I'll get straight to the point. I'm here to help the Hera clan. Harayan smiled. Help my Hera clan? Zhou Xian nodded. I have 2 goals for coming to Eternal World this time. First, to destroy the Yi clan. Second, to help the Hera clan. Harayan smiled and said, Go on. Zhou Xian smiled. Senior, you don't believe me? Harayan looked at Zhou Xian. You want the Immortal Mountain Range's gold mine? Zhou Xian shook his head. Senior, do you think I came to Eternal World just to serve that woman? Harayan nodded. I don't think so. However, I feel that you have no chance of winning. Not to mention the current you, even if you awaken now, you won't have the ability to fight against that woman. Right now, the Yi clan is under her control, including Yi Tian and Yi Qian who helped you before. Moreover, my Hera clan has no need to become enemies with the Yi clan. What do you think? Zhou Xian smiled. That woman asked me to rob your Hera clan's gold mine. Moreover, I can only rob your Hera clan's gold mine. Senior, do you know what this means? It means that woman still holds a grudge against me for what happened back then. Harayan smiled. Isn't it normal for her to hold a grudge against me for what happened back then? Moreover, why does she hold a grudge against me for what happened back then? Isn't it because of you? Back then, my Hera clan didn't hesitate to go to war with the Yi clan for you, but what did we get in return? Nothing at all. Zhou Xian said softly. I'm very sorry for what happened back then. Harayan shook his head. It's all in the past. Now we don't want to have anything to do with you or the Yi clan. Zhou Xian suddenly operated the bloodline in his body. Boom. A powerful bloodline aura swept out from his body. Harayan frowned. Your bloodline isn't the Yi clan's bloodline. Zhou Xian smiled. Then in Senior's opinion, how does my bloodline compare to the Yi clan's bloodline? Harayan stared at Zhou Xian. You really aren't simple in this life. Zhou Xian walked up to Harayan and said seriously, to tell you the truth, I've already received the support of a mysterious force. I came to the Eternal World this time to eliminate the Yi clan and reshuffle the entire Eternal World. Harayan narrowed his eyes. Mysterious force. What force? Zhou Xian smiled. Can't you guess, Senior? Harayan seemed to have thought of something. His pupils suddenly shrank. Moke Divine Clan. Zhou Xian immediately looked around and said, Senior, be careful with your words. Harayan stared at Zhou Xian. Is that woman back? Zhou Xian shook his head. Not yet. But she'll be back soon. After a moment of silence, Harayan said, About what happened back then, my Hera clan. Zhou Xian smiled. Don't worry, Uncle. We won't target the Hera clan. However, I would like Uncle to cooperate with me. As he spoke, he took out thousands of great Tao origin crystals and placed them in front of Harayan. I'll borrow these crystals for a while. When the time comes, I'll return them intact. At the same time, I'll borrow someone from Senior, the Moke celestial race, and I will definitely repay this favor in the future. Harayan took a look at those great Tao source crystals. These things aren't simple. It's basically impossible for them to exist in the outside world. Zhou Xian smiled but said nothing. Harayan remained silent for a long time before he said, Who do you want to borrow? Zhou Xian glanced at Harayan. I want to borrow Miss Harayan. Harayan immediately shook his head. No. Zhou Xian immediately said, Then let's borrow the old man who brought us up. Harayan's expression froze. Chapter 1702. Haralia finally understood. The one Zhou Xian really wanted to borrow was Qi Lao. Haralia looked at Zhou Xian and did not speak. Zhou Xian said, Senior, don't worry. That Senior is following me. He doesn't need to do anything. He just needs to follow me. No matter what happens, he doesn't need to do anything. Haralia was about to speak when Haralia suddenly said, I'll follow you. Haralia looked at Haralia. Haralia said softly, Give me a drop of your blood. Zhou Xian pointed and a drop of blood floated in front of Haralia. Haralia opened her palm and caught the drop of blood. After looking at it for a while, she turned to look at Haralia. It's above my clan's bloodline. above the Hera clan's bloodline. Heralia was silent. Heralia said again, "Father, don't worry. I will always put the clan first." Heralia sighed softly. "Girl." At this moment Yi Xian suddenly said, "Uncle, don't worry. In this life I will not go back on my word. At all times I will put her first." Hearing this, Heralia's body trembled slightly. She turned to look at Yi Xian and did not speak. Heralia looked at Yi Xian. "In this life you are a man." After saying this, he turned and left. Yi Xian looked at Heralia. "Lady Yan, let's go." Heralia nodded slightly. Soon the two left. Fo. On the other side, Heralia stood on the clouds and looked down at Yi Xian and the others silently. At this moment, a woman in palace attire appeared beside Heralia. The woman looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "Why?" Heralia said, "Yenner wants to help him." The woman smiled. "I'm afraid it's not that simple, right?" Heralia nodded. The woman said in a low voice, "Do you really believe that the person behind him is Goddess Moku?" Heralian said softly, "Whether it's Goddess Moku or not, there's one thing we can be sure of. The person behind him is definitely not simple." The woman nodded. "Since this boy dares to come to Immortal World, he must have something to rely on. However, he still has no chance of winning." Heralian smiled and said, "Just wait and see." The woman suddenly asked, "Why is he borrowing people?" Heralian shook his head. "I don't know." The woman looked into the distance and said softly, "Will there be no return?" Heralian's face immediately darkened. Yi Xian took Herayan and left the Hella realm. Under Herayan's lead, everyone went straight to the everlasting mountain range. On the way, Herayan suddenly asked, "What are your plans?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Alive." Hera glanced at Yi Xian. "Are you willing to join the Hera clan?" Yi Xian shook his head. If he chose to join the Hera clan now, Ah Ming and the others would die. After all, Ah Ming and the others were now in the Yi clan. It had to be said that this woman had some tricks up her sleeve. He had just arrived at the Yi clan and was already in a passive position. Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "This is the gold mine that our Hera clan controls. It belongs to you now." Yi Xian glanced at the cave and said, "There are ores inside?" Herayan said, "The eternal life crystal is mixed, but it is still useful." Yi Xian took out a great Tao origin crystal. "How does it compare to this?" Herayan glanced at the great Tao origin crystal and said, "This is not bad. It is much better than this low-grade eternal life crystal. However, it cannot compare to a top-grade eternal life crystal." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. "When you took this out, my father was very shocked. That's because the great Tao origin of the outside world has basically been sucked dry by the immortal world." Yi Xian was stunned. "It's been sucked dry?" Herayan nodded. "The main reason why the great Tao origin of the outside world disappeared so quickly is that it has been constantly being absorbed by the immortal world. However, the people outside don't know." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "No wonder the spiritual energy here is so dense." "So that's why." Herayan looked at the great Tao origin crystal in Yi Xian's hand. "When we saw this, the first thought that came to my father's mind was that there are worlds outside that the immortal world doesn't know about." Yi Xian didn't say anything. His father said that he wanted to look around, but he hadn't come to the immortal world. In other words, his father might have gone somewhere else. Where exactly did he go? And this Sword Tao alliance? Just how strong was this Sword Tao alliance? He didn't know. It was precisely because he didn't know that he wouldn't place all his hopes on the Sword Alliance. If he couldn't rely on it, then wouldn't both of them be in pain? At this moment, Herayan suddenly said, "The members of my Hera clan have already retreated. Now this ore vein is yours. What are you going to do?" Yi Xian glanced at the ore vein. "To the Shao clan." Herayan looked at Yi Xian. "To the Shao clan?" Yi Xian nodded. Herayan said in a low voice, "You're not going back to the Yi clan?" Yi Xian smiled. "Not for now." With that, he turned and left. Dao Yi and the other two followed him. Herayan was silent for a moment before following. She couldn't understand Yi Xian's intentions. In fact, Dao Yi couldn't understand Yi Xian's intentions. What was this guy trying to do? Soon, everyone arrived at the Shao world. As soon as they arrived at the Shao world, an old man appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, please inform your clan leader that Yi Xian of the Yi clan pays his respects. The old man glanced at Yi Xian. Wait a moment. With that he turned and left. A moment later the old man appeared in front of Yi Xian again. Young master Yi, please. Under the old man's lead, everyone came to a straw hut in the mountains. There was a vegetable garden in front of the hut and an old man was hoeing in the garden. Seeing Yi Xian and the others arrive, the old man put down the hoe in his hand and smiled. Should I call you God Yi or young master Yi? Yi Xian smiled. Yi Xian. The old man smiled. Young master Yi then. With that he walked to a wooden table and sat down. Young master Yi, sit. Yi Xian sat in front of the old man and said directly, destroy the Yi clan. Hearing that, everyone was speechless. The smile on the old man's face gradually disappeared, but he quickly returned to normal. He looked at Yi Xian. Young master Yi is so straightforward. This old man is a little unprepared. Yi Xian said with a smile, annihilating the Yi clan is the purpose of my trip. The old man smiled. As far as I know, young master Yi is extremely good at bluffing. Today I want to hear young master Yi bluff. Come on, please start your performance. Yi Xian was speechless. The old man laughed. Young master Yi is so straightforward, so this old man will not play those tricks. My words are a little blunt, please forgive me. Yi Xian opened his palm and the sword spirit appeared in his hand. He placed the sword spirit on the table. Senior, I obtained this sword by chance. I would like to ask Senior to take a look. The old man glanced at the sword spirit. In an instant his eyes narrowed. Yi Xian said again, I've long heard that the Shao clan's bloodline is the #1 bloodline in the eternal world. This junior is not talented, but I would like to see it for myself. The old man looked at Yi Xian. See the bloodline? Yi Xian smiled. He opened his palm and the bloodline in his body began to boil. Boom. In an instant, a powerful bloodline power appeared around him. Seeing this bloodline, the old man's expression gradually became solemn. A moment later the old man turned to the side. Serve young master Yi some tea. Soon a woman walked out. She was very young, about 20 years old and very beautiful. The woman poured a cup of tea for Yi Xian, then retreated to the old man's side. Yi Xian retracted the bloodline power. He picked up the teacup and took a sip, then smiled. The Hera clan has expressed their full support for me. They will not rest until the Yi clan is destroyed. Hearing that, Haraya turned to look at Yi Xian, his mind still in a daze. The elder glanced at Harayan, then at Yi Xian. I can see it. However, this old man is a little curious about young Master Ye's identity in this life. I wonder if young Master Yi can tell me. Yi Xian put down the teacup and said with a smile, I wonder if Senior has heard of the protagonist Halo? Inside his body Shao Ta, the old man frowned. Protagonist Halo? Yi Xian said seriously, to tell you the truth, I am the main character. He has the protagonist Halo. Since he was going to brag, he had to brag big. Anyway, this old man had definitely never been to the Milky Way realm, so he wouldn't know what a main character was. When Shao Ta heard what Yi Xian said in the prison pagoda, he was dumbfounded. Peace, I don't dare to speak too much recently. As for the updates, please forgive me. I will do my best to save my draft and then explode. I don't usually brag. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.